Meanwhile, inside the kitchen, a group of cooks and servants were busying themselves to prepare the next meal. Samantha was also there to help them, but she had other plans in mind. I have been trying to get closer to these lowly bugs just so I could move on to the next part of my plan. Miss Samantha, you shouldn't do these chores. Just leave it to us. Your beautiful hands might get calluses, said a young maidservant as she snatched the knife from her. That won't do. I cannot let you guys do all the work. She shook her head with a smile. They were bickering back and forth when a servant came to the kitchen with urgent news. Big news. Her Majesty is here. She came with the Lord Grand Commander. Hearing this, Samantha's eyes flashed with surprise. Why is she here? Please excuse me, everyone. I need to go get something upstairs. I'll leave the work here in your hands. She excused herself and left the kitchen in a hurry. As soon as she left the kitchen, her face became unsightly. What is going on here? Why do I have a bad feeling about this? I need to know the situation. She went up the stairs and was about to head straight to Alaric's study, but she was stopped by a blue-haired woman. You are not allowed to go beyond this point. Leave at once. Nivis stared at her with undisguised contempt. Samantha felt like punching her face, but she held back her fury and let out a smile. Is there something going on, Miss Nivis? The security wasn't this tight before. Nivis scoffed after seeing her acting. She waved her hand as if she were shooing away an insect. Nothing is going on. I just don't want you here. Now piss off. Veins protruded on Samantha's face. She was so furious that she almost tore her mask off. I don't know how I may have offended you. I apologize for whatever I did. She forced a smile. Nivis sent her a disdainful smile before she turned around and walked away. Samantha narrowed her eyes, her heart seething with fury. What's with that attitude? Did they discover my identity? Miss Samantha, please forgive her. Miss Nivis just doesn't want any woman getting close to the Lord Venerable. An apologetic voice drifted into her ears. Taken aback, Samantha turned around and saw Scylla giving her an awkward smile. This woman, what's her name again? Oh right, it's Scylla. Hello, Miss Scylla. I'm fine. I was just shocked. I thought I did something to upset her. Hearing you say this is such a relief. Samantha put her hand on her chest and faked a relieved look. Scylla smiled faintly. You have nothing to worry about. Miss Nivis is just that blunt. I hope you won't be offended by her comments. Not at all. Samantha shook her head. Now then, please excuse me. I still have other matters to attend to. Scylla nodded to her and left without looking back. Samantha watched her leave with a thoughtful look. So that bitch Nivis is just jealous that I'm becoming closer to Alaric. She sneered. I will deal with you once I complete my task. Inside the study, only Alaric, the Grand Commander, and the Empress were present. This was because the Empress told him to send the others out. I came here to ask you more about the situation. The Empress observed the young Estanian prince. She was having hallucinations when she first met him, so she hadn't gotten a clearer look at him. He was handsome and he had this princely temperament unique to the Imperials, but the one thing about him that caught her attention was his aura. He hid it deeply, but she could sense his overwhelming power that was way beyond his age. He was the most talented person she had ever met. His talent had even surpassed her own. When I was his age, I was only a knight. While the Empress was observing him, Alaric was doing the same. She seemed like a different person now. It was a complete change of personality, so Alaric didn't know how to act in her presence. She didn't specifically mention the heretic cult, but he knew that she came to verify this matter. This was directly involved in the safety of her empire, so he could understand her urgency. I believe the Lord Grand Commander has already informed you about my plan. That's right. I'd like to hear more about it. Can you really promise that Estania will send troops to support us in this battle? It almost sounded like a plea, but this was how desperate she was to eliminate the heretic cult. Alaric nodded with a smile. I don't want to boast, but I had a remarkable achievement during our battle against Haroun. His Majesty, the Estanian Emperor, owes our household a huge favor. I have already sent word back home and it should reach His Majesty's ears soon. In a few days, we should get a response from him. If you don't believe me, we can wait for his response. The Empress was a bit surprised by his confidence. It didn't seem like she was speaking to a young man, but someone who was more mature. Since you are that confident, I will trust you. She adjusted her posture. There was a moment of silence before she spoke again. Once we receive the confirmation from Estania, I will mobilize the troops on our side. Tell me your plans so we can work on it. Yes, Your Majesty. Alaric nodded with a serious expression. He told her about the various stages of his plans. The Empress listened and she voiced her own ideas to make his plan even more solid. Her suggestions were excellent, so Alaric didn't complain and accepted them. After a long talk, Ischila stood up and said with a stern look, I will send you the troops tomorrow. You can command them however you want, but you must promise me that this won't affect the citizens. Alaric nodded. I will make sure that everyone will be safe. After the discussion, Alaric escorted them out of the mansion. On their way out, they encountered Samantha in the main hall. She stood there as if she were waiting for them, but Alaric and the Empress ignored her. Samantha bowed deeply and greeted the Empress with a respectful smile. Your Majesty. The Empress and Alaric passed by without saying a word. Upon stepping out of the mansion, the Empress turned her head at him. Before I go, I have one piece of advice for you. Alaric raised his eyebrows, curious to hear her next words. You must tread carefully. There might be snakes lurking in the corner, waiting for an opportunity to strike you. Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. Are you talking about Samantha? You don't have to worry about that. I am already aware. His eyebrows relaxed as he let out a faint smile. The Empress was surprised. You are? Alaric shook his head. I will deal with her in due time, but that will have to wait since she is still of use. With Samantha's strength, he believed that she had a high position in the heretic cult. He was waiting for the right timing to catch the person she had been contacting in secret. I underestimated you. It seems like my worries are unnecessary. The Empress shook her head, turned around, and left. The Grand Commander saluted Alaric before he followed the Empress. He then opened the carriage door for her. Soon, their carriage left and disappeared into the night. When he could no longer see the carriage, Alaric headed back inside the mansion. The next day, the promised troops arrived in front of the mansion. There were about 10,000 of them. There weren't many of them, but they were all part of the Imperial Guards, the best of the best in all of Veronica. By using his appraisal, Alaric discovered that the weakest among them was a knight. There were also dozens of elite knights and 10 transcendents. It was a stacked unit, and this made him incredibly pleased. Shall we begin the operation? With a smile, Alaric looked at the senior inspector, whose anxiety was evident on his face. Yes, Your Highness. Jaemund Felton was intimidated by the aura exuded by the Imperial Guards. They didn't even deliberately release their aura, but he was still suffocated by their presence. He took a deep breath and turned his head to his subordinates. The inspectors looked visibly nervous, but they tried to remain calm so as not to embarrass the senior inspector. Inspectors, you will be assigned to team up with the Imperial Guards to investigate the suspected members of the heretic cult. There is a high chance that fights may break out during the investigation, but no need to fret. The Imperial Guards will handle all the fights and you will only be responsible for. A lengthy speech followed, but everyone listened carefully. This was a mission with some degree of danger involved, so they were afraid to miss anything important. That would be all. Jaemund Felton ended his speech and nodded to Alaric. It was Alaric's cue to take the floor. He confidently stepped forward and opened his mouth. His calm, yet authoritative voice echoed. Your assigned teams have already been posted on the bulletin board right there. Find your team members and proceed to your assigned target once you are ready. As soon as his voice fell, everyone turned their heads to the big bulletin board. Alaric didn't linger after the announcement. He went back to the mansion to make his own preparations. Inside his room, Samantha helped him put on his armor. Your Highness, are you heading out to find the members of the heretic cult? She asked all of a sudden. Alaric looked at her through the mirror and asked, Why do you ask? I'm just worried about you. Everyone knows that the heretic cult is a dangerous group. Your Highness must be careful out there. Samantha spoke with a look of concern. Alaric almost laughed at her good acting, but he controlled his emotions. He let out a smile and responded. The heretic cult might be dangerous, but I am not a weak man. I will be fine. Samantha grabbed his hand and stared into his eyes. Please come back unharmed. I have to hand it to her. She is a good actress. She's even better than some actresses in the troops back home. Alaric played along with her. He took her in his arms and gently rubbed her back. I will be back soon. Samantha quivered at the unexpected body contact. She resisted the urge to push him away and acted like the shy woman she had portrayed. I will give my body to you after you return, she mumbled. Alaric chuckled. You can't take that back anymore. She smiled faintly, her eyes filled with passion. She took something out of her bosom and handed it to him. Please take this. It's a medicine from my hometown. Can help you clear your mind. Alaric could still feel her warmth from the bottle. He looked at the pills inside and smiled in gratitude. Thank you. Samantha dove into his arms, her hands moving towards a certain bulge. She then said in a seductive voice, I heard that it also helps in boosting performance. Alaric scoffed in his mind, but he pretended to be amazed. There's such an amazing medicine? This must be the poison that she got from her contact. Did she finally run out of patience? He thought to himself. We will know once you return, Your Highness. She lifted her head and sent him a knowing look. Alaric laughed as if he were looking forward to that day. I must go now. Wait for me here. He grabbed his swords and put on a robe over his armor. He took one last look at her, as if he was reluctant to leave. Creak. As soon as he left the room, Samantha's face darkened. Alaric, I thought it would take me a long time to control you, but you are more gullible than that stupid empress. Forget about taking my body. The moment you return here, you will be nothing more than my puppet. The corner of her lips curved up to form an evil smile. Alaric headed out of the mansion and saw his subordinates waiting for him outside. They had already prepared a disaster-grade horse for him. He took the reins from Galliner and jumped onto his horse. After expertly putting his feet on the stirrups, he looked at his subordinates and said, We are heading out. He lightly squeezed his legs to urge his horse to move. Yes, Lord Venerable. At this moment, Nivis urged her horse to move next to Alaric's. You have that woman's scent on you. She scoffed at him with a look of disdain. Alaric looked at her and laughed. The more I look at you, the more I find it hilarious. Hearing this, Nivis frowned. What do you mean? Alaric shook his head, stifling his laughter. I mean, you are a centaurus, but you are riding a horse. In her embarrassment, Nivis released a punch, but Alaric seemed to be prepared for this. He blocked her fist with his palm with an amused expression. All right, that's enough, and remember what I told you. He reminded her. This centaurus nearly exposed herself in front of Samantha. Luckily, Scylla was there to clear things up. Nivis pulled back her fist and snorted. Stop nagging me. I know what to do. Alaric shook his head helplessly. Their goal was only to intimidate the heretic cult. Alaric moving with the Imperial Guards and the inspection department was only for show. His real objective was something else. Without me at the mansion, Samantha will definitely contact the man from the heretic cult, and that man will help us find their main headquarters. He smiled faintly as he took out the medicine bottle he got from Samantha. What's that? Nivis's curious voice drifted into his ears. I got this from that woman. Alaric responded with a chuckle. Nivis sneered. That's definitely laced with poison. Alaric grinned. He clenched his fist and used his mana to burn the bottle. The high temperature from the flame melted the bottle and pills inside until there was nothing left. His hand that came in contact with the melted pills blackened for a moment, but it soon recovered to normal in a few seconds. The poison was only potent through direct consumption. With his high vitality, it only made his skin slightly irritated upon contact. Nivis looked disgusted upon seeing this. As expected, I could tell since the first time we met that she is suspicious. Alaric covered his ears with manna. He couldn't be bothered to listen to her words because he had already heard her say this over and over. Hey, are you listening to me? After they left, Samantha changed into a new set of clothes and headed out of the mansion. On her way down the stairs, she encountered the servants she had befriended. Miss Samantha, are you heading to the Imperial Palace? One of the maidservants asked with a smile. Samantha was in a hurry, but she still responded politely. Yes, I have to go there for an errand. I will be back this evening. I see. Please have a safe trip, Miss Samantha. You guys too. Samantha excused herself and left. She didn't want her whereabouts to be known, so she didn't ride in a carriage. She looked around, making sure that no one was nearby. After ensuring no one followed her, she released her mana and rushed towards the market area. Unbeknownst to her, a figure emerged behind a tree and chased after her without a sound. Samantha was unaware that she was being followed. Her mind was also occupied with other things. I have to inform the others before it's too late. She had overheard Alaric's subordinates talking about their plan to capture the members of the heretic cult. When she arrived at the more populated part of the city, Samantha went to a clothing shop to change her attire. She also adjusted her hairstyle so no one would recognize her. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and nodded with a pleased look. No one should recognize me now. She paid for the clothes and left the shop. She then headed to another location on foot. At this moment, a person wearing a straw hat quietly followed her. He maintained a distance between himself and Samantha to make sure that she wouldn't discover him. When Samantha would look his way, he would hide behind the crowd and blend in with his surroundings. She's more careful this time. Is she meeting the same person? Sikas thought to himself. As he followed her, he realized that she wasn't heading to the flower shop. Samantha was heading to a different location this time. Soon, Samantha stopped in front of a church. It was a church for the believers of the benevolent God. Samantha looked to her left and right before she entered the church. Sikas, who was observing this from several meters away, found it unusual. Why would a member of the heretic cult come to the church? He walked towards a different entrance while keeping his eyes on Samantha. Inside, he saw her enter a confessional. A moment later, a priest entered the opposite side of the confessional. Seeing this, Sikas thought about moving closer to eavesdrop on their conversation. However, just as he was about to take a step, he suddenly sensed an oppressive aura behind him. He stopped in his tracks, eyebrows furrowed. "Young man, are you here to confess your sins?" A kind and aged voice drifted into his ears. Sikas turned around. He couldn't see with his eyes, but with his unique perception, he saw the person who had just spoken. He saw things differently from others. Unlike normal people who could only see the outer appearance of things, Sikas could see the color of one's soul. A bright, white soul represented a kind person, whereas a cloudy, dark soul represented a sinful person. Sikas, who was usually calm, revealed a look of surprise when he saw the person's soul. His soul, it was dark, the kind of darkness that would make one's skin crawl. It was so dark that it almost seemed like the void in space. "I came here to offer my prayers. Please excuse me." Sikas bowed to the old priest and walked away. The old priest stared deeply at him. His lips curved up to form a grin. A black dagger suddenly appeared in his hand. He was about to do something, but he changed his mind. He unsummoned the dagger and shook his head with a chuckle. A peak transcendent came here to confess his sins? How amusing. The investigations on the suspected members of the heretic cult began. Several establishments all over Sorrel were forced to close temporarily for allegedly protecting the members of the heretic cult. The residents were startled by the big joint operation between the Imperial Guards and the Inspection Department. Many were afraid, but most were relieved to hear that someone was finally taking action against the cult. At this moment, Alaric and his subordinates were leading an entrapment operation together with the Imperial Guards and the Inspection Department. They were responsible for handling a bigger case, so they brought more people. Nivis was on her horse, looking at the target location with a baffled expression. So the target is a 3-ringed beast soul master. Why would an expert at that level join a shady cult? She shook her head, unable to understand the reason for such a choice. Alaric, who was right beside her, responded with a sigh. When you are desperate, you will try to cling to something that gives you hope. Nivis looked at him and raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? She asked. The target is a single father who has an ill daughter. He had been searching all over the Empire to find a cure for his daughter, but he couldn't find anything. Even the most renowned doctors and healers couldn't do anything to save his daughter. The heretic cult invited him to join them, promising him to cure his daughter in exchange for his faith. He didn't hesitate and agreed to join the cult. So he agreed to join the cult to save his daughter. Nivis shook her head, her expression unreadable. She looked at him and asked, So did they save his daughter? Alaric shook his head and replied, It wasn't in the report. We might find out once we capture him. Suddenly, they heard a commotion inside the establishment. The sounds of blades clashing could be heard. Hearing this, Alaric jumped off his horse with a frown. We should help out, he said before he rushed towards the building. Seeing this, Nivis clicked her tongue and reluctantly jumped off her horse to follow him. As soon as they entered the building, they saw the Imperial Guards fighting against a lone man. It was a middle-aged man with a shaggy beard. He was holding onto a doll with his left hand and a sword in the other. Using his sword, he fended off the Imperial Guards. Alaric used his appraisal on him and realized that this person was their target. What's going on here? Alaric asked a trembling junior inspector who was hiding behind a cabinet. We were just chatting with him when he suddenly attacked us. We hadn't even mentioned anything about the cult, but he attacked the Imperial Guards. The inspector replied in a shaking voice. Alaric furrowed his eyebrows. How dare you touch my daughter? Leave at once if you don't want to die. A furious roar echoed through the building. Alaric turned his head and saw the target pointing his sword at the Imperial Guards with eyes filled with anger. We didn't touch anyone. What are you saying, sir? One of the Imperial Guards reasoned. The middle-aged man seemed to be furious. How dare you lie when I saw everything? My daughter, she was so afraid when you guys came. You could have come here when she was asleep. He lovingly caressed the doll's face when he uttered the last sentence. The Imperial Guards were stunned when they realized what he was talking about. Some felt pity for him, while the others remained indifferent. Sir, you should stop resisting and follow us. That way, no one will be harmed, said a senior officer of the Imperial Guards as he slowly approached the middle-aged man. Stop right there. Don't even think of getting close to me. The middle-aged man was agitated. He threw his sword into the air and controlled it with his psychic abilities. This was his integrated monster trait. He had the ability to control things using his mana. It was a rare ability, so the Imperial Guards were both amazed and threatened. The atmosphere was tense, and it looked like the Imperial Guards were about to attack at any moment. Hold on. Alaric stepped forward and motioned to the Imperial Guards not to make any move. Seeing his signal, the Imperial Guards stepped back and withdrew their weapons. The middle-aged man looked at Alaric with a frown. Who are you? Alaric stopped a few meters from the man and smiled at him. We didn't come here to hurt your daughter, sir. I apologize if we may have startled your daughter. He lightly lowered his head. The Imperial Guards were stunned when they saw this. They had never seen a member of the Imperial family bowing to a commoner before. Not even the aristocrats would do something like this, for they find it demeaning to their status. Your Highness! The Imperial Guards wanted to say something, but Alaric waved his hand, motioning to them not to intervene. Alaric felt pity for this man. He had been deceived by the cult. They used his vulnerability to get him to join them. You must really love your daughter. Alaric looked at the doll in the man's hand. He could sense traces of an evil aura from it. It was the filthiest aura he had ever felt. It was even worse than Scylla's necromancy powers. The middle-aged man's gaze softened when he heard this. Of course, she is my most beloved little treasure. I will do anything for her. Alaric sighed at his words. Sir, please follow us. I will ensure your safety and your daughter's safety. I promise you, he persuaded. The middle-aged man hesitated. He looked at the doll with affection before turning his gaze back to Alaric. Did you come here because I'm part of the cult? He asked, his face turning cold. Alaric nodded. You might have done it to save your daughter, but you should know that the cult is an enemy of Veronica. Joining them is an act of treason. The middle-aged man smiled at him. He deactivated his psychic powers. I knew this day would come when I joined the cult, but I don't regret anything. He stroked the doll's head when he said this. Alaric's face became gloomier when he heard this. He stared deeply at the man and muttered, What if you realized they were deceiving you all this time? The middle-aged man frowned. What are you saying? Alaric lifted his hand and summoned his power of destruction to destroy the evil aura emanating from the doll. Ihe! Everyone heard an eerie sound, but it soon vanished. The middle-aged man was shocked and something within him seemed to have snapped. He lowered his head and was horrified to find out that the one in his hand wasn't his daughter, but a worn-out fabric doll. He subconsciously let go of the doll. This how? My daughter! His voice was filled with utter disbelief. You have been deceived by the cult. Alaric's voice drifted into his ears like a hammer. They never wanted to help you cure your daughter. They just wanted to use you. He added. The middle-aged man couldn't believe it. The fragments of memories in his mind didn't add up and it made him utterly confused. No, it can't be. My daughter. He couldn't accept the truth. Tears fell from his eyes when he realized that it was all a lie. His heart felt like it was being torn into pieces. He grabbed his chest as he cried with deep sorrow and pain. Everyone watched this scene and empathized with him. The middle-aged man grabbed the doll and wailed. His screams and cries echoed across the building, stabbing the hearts of the listeners. Alaric let out a sigh. He made a hand gesture, motioning to the group to leave the building. Everyone quietly left so they wouldn't disturb the grieving father. After a long time, the man's screams turned into sobs. He lifted his head and looked at Alaric with a mixture of emotion. Thank you. Alaric didn't say anything and just nodded his head. Alaric tied the man's hands with mithril handcuffs. This is for my subordinates' safety. I hope you understand. They wouldn't feel at ease if I let you walk freely after all that ruckus you made. He still seemed out of it. Your identity is a bit special, so you will be taken to an underground prison. Just stay there and be good. I will try to persuade the officials to minimize your sentence. Alaric felt that this man deserved a second chance. He was only forced by his circumstances. Thank you. The middle-aged man hung his head low. Alaric summoned the Imperial Guards and instructed them to escort the target to the underground prison. The operation concluded just like that. You could have released him, Nivis remarked as she approached him. Alaric shook his head. It would be unfair to the innocent people who fell victim to the heretic cult. He may be a victim too, but he still joined the cult. Nivis shrugged at his response. Let's go. We still have 2 more targets before the day ends. Alaric nodded to her and stepped out of the building. Nivis clicked her tongue. Upon stepping out of the building, Alaric saw Sikas rushing towards him on a horse. When he was only a few meters from Alaric, Sikas pulled the reins to make his horse stop. He then jumped off and bowed to Alaric. Lord Venerable, there is something that you must hear. Hearing this, Alaric furrowed his eyebrows and nodded. Go on. I'm listening. There was no one around except Nivis, as the others were busy cleaning up the operation's aftermath. Sikas leaned forward and reported everything that happened at the church. Alaric's face became grim when he heard what had happened. He looked at Sikas and muttered with a frown. The old priest you encountered at the church must be a high-ranking member of the heretic cult. Perhaps he might even be the cult leader. The man's aura, it was beyond mine. He is definitely a venerable, a powerful one. Sikas spoke with great certainty. Alaric agreed with this. Sikas usually never showed much of a reaction, but Alaric could sense the fear in his expression. Just what kind of person did he encounter to make him look like this? Alaric took a deep breath to calm his emotions. Should I continue tailing that woman? Sikas asked. Alaric shook his head. No. They must have realized your identity. Following her alone would be dangerous. He couldn't allow Sikas to take the risk. He might be powerful, but he wasn't invincible. You will join us in the next operations, Alaric added. I obey. Sikas acknowledged the order without complaint. In the next few days, many suspected members of the heretic cult have been captured. The normal members were taken to a government prison, while the high-ranking members were taken to a separate, more secure facility. The actions done by the Imperial Guards and the Inspection Department brought a wave of relief to the citizens of Veronica. Some residents even actively supported the operation by giving information about suspicious individuals. With the people's support, the operation proceeded smoothly. Everyone thought that the heretic cult would be eradicated, but something happened 2 weeks after the operation began. Almunson, the second-largest city of Veronica, was taken over by the heretic cult. The news shocked everyone in the capital. No one expected something like this to happen. Almunson wasn't a weak city by any means. There were several big aristocratic houses in the city with powerful armies. It was also under the protection of the Bloody Iris, the Duchess of House Park. However, even with so many powerful aristocratic houses, Almunson didn't even last for 2 days after being attacked by the heretic cult. There were still no official reports on the number of casualties, but it was said that the Duchess, Park Sagwa, was captured and imprisoned by the members of the heretic cult. The news of her capture sent the people into panic. Many neighboring cities closed their gates in fear of the cult's attack. The cult's retaliation came so quickly. At this moment, Alaric was heading to the imperial palace. He received an invitation from the Empress. Nothing was mentioned on the invitation letter, but he could already guess what the Empress wanted to discuss with him. Inside the carriage, Alaric was immersed in his thoughts. Your Highness, why do you look so gloomy? A pleasant voice drifted into his ears. Turning his head, he looked at Samantha. He didn't return to the mansion for a long time, and he could sense that she was starting to get impatient. I still haven't fulfilled my promise to you. Her voice was filled with hidden meanings. Alaric couldn't be bothered to play along with her anymore. She was already of no use to him. By following her whereabouts, they found a few secret hideouts of the heretic cult, and they even captured several high-ranking members. With an indifferent look, he replied, We have no time for that. Aren't you aware of what is happening to Veronica right now? Samantha was stunned by his cold response. He would usually smile at him and even say sweet words, but he was unusually harsh this time. It was as if he had become a completely different person. Samantha lowered her head and apologized. I'm sorry for speaking carelessly, Your Highness. She clenched her teeth, controlling her anger and annoyance. How is he still fine? Normally, the poison would work after a week upon consumption, but 2 weeks had already passed by. However, Alaric showed no signs of change. She still couldn't detect a trace of poison energy from him. Suddenly, a thought occurred to her. Could it be? He found out about the poison? Her pupils contracted. We are here, Lord Venerable. This is as far as I can take you. The coachman's voice interrupted her thoughts. Alaric pulled his eyes from her and muttered, Follow me. Samantha felt that something was amiss. She didn't want to follow him, but she felt that something bad would happen if she didn't listen. Gritting her teeth, she stepped out of the carriage and trailed behind Alaric, watching his back with an uneasy expression. Did they discover my identity? Shit. I should have listened to the high priest. She looked around, searching for a possible escape route in case something happened. Miss Samantha! Samantha! Alaric's voice echoed, startling her. Yes, I'm here, Your Highness. She nervously looked at him. Alaric jumped onto the horse provided by the Imperial Guards and beckoned to her with a smile. Come up here and sit with me. Seeing his charming smile, Samantha eased her fear. She forced a smile and nodded. Yes, Your Highness. Alaric pulled her up onto the horse and made her sit in front of him. Hold tight, he whispered into her ear. Alaric held onto her hips with his left and onto the reins on the other. He then lightly squeezed his legs, urging the horse to move. Did I make you nervous? Alaric suddenly asked. Samantha didn't know how to respond. Forgive me. The recent news must have made me stressed out. I didn't expect the cult to retaliate this strongly. Alaric sighed. His words made Samantha relax. She thought that her identity had been discovered, but it seemed like he was still in the dark. That scared me. I thought they already knew everything about me. She placed her hand on her chest and felt her wildly beating heart. You don't have to apologize, Your Highness. It was inconsiderate of me to only think of having fun when the entire country is in chaos. She feigned sadness and guilt. Alaric chatted with her along the way to make her relax her guard. Can you still keep that mask later? I wonder. He smirked as he thought of this. Soon they arrived in front of the palace. Alaric jumped off the horse and helped Samantha climb down. An imperial guard brought them directly to the throne room where a group of ministers and officials were waiting for them. Alaric looked at the throne, but the Empress was still not there. The Grand Commander was also not around. A few officials greeted Alaric, but the others just stayed in their positions without even bothering to look at him. Alaric was already used to this, so it didn't bother him much. The supreme ruler of Veronica has arrived, announced the messenger in a booming voice. Everyone subconsciously straightened their postures upon hearing this. They turned their heads to the huge double doors and saw the Empress in her dragon and phoenix robe, walking along the red carpet with great elegance and poise. Her face was calm and cold, her aura intimidating. Behind her was the Grand Commander, who eyed the gathered officials with a stern look. The Empress's gaze momentarily stopped on Alaric, but no one seemed to have noticed this. Before sitting on her throne, she scanned the crowd with her icy gaze. I called you all here to discuss the matter about Almunson. The heretic cult has retaliated, and it's not just Almunson that is affected. Other cities also reported attacks from unidentified forces. The Empress added, her face looking grim. We cannot sit idly by while our people are suffering. We must take action now. Anger was palpable in her voice as she spoke those words. I have summoned the armies of Veronica to attack the warriors of the heretic cult. Tomorrow, we will launch an attack on Almunson and take it back from their hands. Gather your troops and bring them to the rally location. The Empress commanded. We obey, Your Majesty. The generals and the officials answered in unison, their voices echoing in the throne room. The Empress flicked her sleeves and sat on her throne. Before that, we must do a massive cleanup on the palace. Upon hearing this, everyone raised their eyebrows with baffled gazes. Bring him in. The Empress made a hand gesture to the Grand Commander. The Grand Commander, Ludwig, nodded and shouted to his subordinates. Bring the traitor inside. The huge double doors sprang open and 2 imperial guards came in, holding a tied-up man with stern faces. When the generals and officials saw this person, they gasped in shock. It was the governor of Almunson, Lei Hansu. He was a middle-aged man with a well-built physique. His skin was light brown, and his thick unibrow made him look quite fierce. Lei Hansu was a former commander of the Veronican army, but he was given an official position for his meritorious service. He had been serving as the governor of Almunson for several decades and was known for his loyalty to the Empress. However, the same man was now brought to the throne room as a traitor, so it filled everyone with disbelief. State his crimes, the Empress commanded in a cold voice. The Grand Commander nodded and opened his mouth as he faced the gathered crowd. Lei Hansu has been secretly colluding with the heretic cult. He covered up the recent cases of disappearances and kidnappings in Almunson. He funded the construction of a few of the heretic cult's hideouts in Almunson. And just recently, he helped the heretic cult attack House Park, which led to the capture of the Duchess, Park Sagwa. Every single one of his crimes could be charged with treason. The moment it was exposed, everyone was furious. So it was you. How dare you collude with those lunatics? One of the generals present couldn't contain his anger and rushed towards Lei Hansu. A group of imperial guards immediately stepped forward to stop him, but the general was a transcendent knight, so it took them great effort to calm him down. General Rin Shu, I understand your anger, but you must control yourself in Her Majesty's presence." The Grand Commander reprimanded the general. The general realized his mistake and quickly apologized to the Empress. "I apologize for my unsightly behavior, Your Majesty. I accept any kind of punishment." Esquila stared deeply at the general and waved her hand indifferently. "This must not happen again, Rin Shu." Her voice was calm, but the general could tell that the Empress was displeased. With a face full of sweat, he lowered his head. "I understand. I will be more careful, Your Majesty." The general glared at Lei Hansu before he returned to his spot. Meanwhile, Samantha, who was standing behind Alaric, was shaking when she saw Lei Hansu. She had a few dealings with this man, so they knew each other. Shit. She was afraid that the guy would expose her. If that happened, she knew that she would be done for. At this moment, the Empress's voice echoed in the throne room. "Lei Hansu, among those who are gathered here, tell me the names of those who are part of the heretic cult." Everyone was stunned. Since the Empress said this, it meant that there were members of the heretic cult in their midst. The generals and the officials glanced at each other with wary gazes. They wondered which of the people gathered were the traitors. Lei Hansu lifted his head, revealing his beaten-up face covered in blood. There was fear in his eyes. I'll talk," he responded in a trembling voice. He took a deep breath and scanned the faces of the crowd. He then pointed at an old minister and shouted, "That guy! He is a member of the cult. I have a few dealings with him, so I wouldn't forget his face." The face of the accused minister darkened. He could sense everyone's judging looks, and it made him feel uncomfortable. However, he forced himself to calm down and denied the accusations. "Lies. He is lying. He is trying to sow discord between us all," the old minister reasoned. Lei Hansu sneered at him. "Stop acting innocent, old fart. I know you are a part of the cult." He looked at the Empress and said, "Your Majesty, I'm telling the truth. You can inspect his house. You will definitely find some clues there." Hearing this, the old minister was agitated. "You scoundrel! How dare you lie to Her Majesty?" With a face full of tears, the old minister knelt before the Empress and cried, "Why, Your Majesty, I have been falsely accused. I'm innocent. I have been following Your Majesty for 5 decades. I will never betray you." Some people were moved by his words. He was indeed among the most loyal people to the Empress. However, there were also others who remained skeptical. Even the governor, who was known for his loyalty to the Empress, was part of the cult, so it wouldn't be surprising if the old man was the same. Esquila was unmoved by his words. She turned her gaze to the Grand Commander. "Send your troops to search his house at once. I obey Your Majesty's commands." The Grand Commander acknowledged her instructions with a bow. He then called his subordinates and passed the Empress's orders. Seeing this, the old minister became even more anxious. "Your Majesty, don't you have any trust in your loyal servant? I have been toiling for you all my life. I never thought of betraying you. Please believe me." The Empress stared at him and said, "If your loyalty is true, then I will apologize if nothing is found in your home. However, if it is proven that you are a member of the cult, you will be hanged tomorrow in front of the citizens of Veronica." The old minister trembled. "Why, Your Majesty, that's enough. Bring him away and lock him up temporarily." The Empress waved her hand with a snort. She then moved her eyes back to Lei Hansu and commanded him to continue. "Go on." "Why, yes." Lei Hansu pointed out a few more people. There was one of them who tried to escape after being named by Lei Hansu, but he was quickly subdued by the Imperial Guards. There was even someone who tried to attack the Empress, but was quickly killed by the Grand Commander. 13 names have been called, and all of them were famous officials and generals. "Is that all?" The Empress stared deeply at Lei Hansu. Lei Hansu was about to nod when he saw a familiar face in the crowd. When Samantha locked eyes with him, she knew that she was screwed. "Shit. That bastard. I'm screwed," she cursed in her mind. Samantha tried to hide behind Alaric, but Lei Hansu had already noticed her. "That woman. She is also part of the cult." Alaric turned around and looked at Samantha with feigned surprise. Samantha, you are from the heretic cult? Samantha shook her head and denied it immediately. No, he is lying. I'm innocent, Your Highness. Her eyes darted around as she subconsciously stepped backwards. An Imperial guard grabbed her shoulder, stopping her from moving. Please don't move if you don't want to get hurt. The Imperial guard muttered with a fierce glint in his eyes. Samantha looked at Alaric and quickly rushed to his side. She grabbed his hands and vehemently denied the accusations. Your Highness, I'm telling the truth. Alaric sighed. You really are a good actress, Samantha. His lips suddenly curved upwards, forming a smile. He looked at her with an amused expression. Did you really think I didn't know about it? He chuckled with a teasing look. The moment you approached me, I already knew that something was off about you. Samantha widened her eyes, feeling a mixture of shock and anger. You? Then why did you do those things? Oh, you mean that? He shrugged. I just wanted to know how far you will go to fulfill your objectives. Thank you for those wonderful memories. He smirked disdainfully. Hearing this, Samantha's eyes turned red and her face contorted with fury. You bastard! I will kill you! She unleashed her mana and activated her hypnotize trait while charging towards Alaric. Alaric let out a sigh while shaking his head. How unsightly! He raised his hand and did a snapping gesture. With a snap of his fingers, he summoned the power of destruction. Bang! Bang! Samantha's head exploded like a smashed watermelon. Everyone was shocked. When Samantha unleashed her mana, they sensed she was a three-ringed beast soul master. In Veronica, she could already be considered one of the peak experts. However, someone at that level actually died with just a snap of a finger. It was an unbelievable sight that made everyone dumbfounded. The headless corpse and the bloodied floor told them that everything was real. It took everyone some time to recover from their shock. Clean it up, the Grand Commander shouted to his men. He couldn't help but give Alaric another look. He was also a mythical knight, but he couldn't kill a three-ringed beast soul master in such a manner. The Empress, Esquila Veronica, stared meaningfully at Alaric. That power, what kind of elemental is that? She didn't recognize what power Alaric had unleashed. She only sensed a burst of mana when Alaric snapped his fingers. Is that a new, undiscovered element? She was curious, but this was not the right time to ask questions. I apologize for my conduct, Your Majesty. I didn't expect her to attack me, so I acted out of instinct. Alaric's nonchalant voice echoed in the throne room. Esquila snorted. She knew that Alaric had deliberately provoked Samantha, so he would have the perfect reason to kill her. It was a calculated move, but she didn't bother to expose him. You were only protecting yourself, so you don't have to apologize. She already planned to kill Samantha anyway, so it didn't matter. At this moment, everyone looked at Alaric with added caution. This guy seemed so young and unassuming, but his strength was already beyond their comprehension. They told themselves not to provoke him so they wouldn't suffer the same fate as Samantha. Esquila stood up from her throne. I expect all your troops will be ready tomorrow. We will set off before sunrise. After saying those words, she walked down the throne. We will mobilize our troops at once, Your Majesty. The generals and officials answered in unison. Their voices rang loudly in the throne room. Esquila walked along the red carpet with an unusually serene expression. When she passed by Alaric, she sent him a look and muttered, I expect your presence tomorrow. She didn't wait for his response and walked away with the Grand Commander. After she left, the generals and officials scrambled out of the throne room. They still had many things to prepare for the expedition tomorrow. They were pressed for time and they might not be able to get some rest tonight. Looking at the scrambling officials, Alaric chuckled with amusement. He calmly left the throne with his hands behind his back. The next day, before the sun had even risen, a large number of soldiers had already gathered at the rally location outside the capital. Various martial and aristocratic houses led their troops to join the expedition commanded by the Empress herself. Everyone felt that it was an opportunity to rise, so they didn't want to miss it. At this moment, a loud roar echoed across the airspace. Everyone subconsciously lifted their heads in shock. Roar! A draconic lion swooped down and landed in the middle of their formation. Some thought that it was hostile, so they prepared to attack. But then they noticed that it was carrying a group of people. Alaric smiled faintly as he jumped off Zephyr's back. His subordinates followed suit, jumping off one by one. Their dramatic entrance shocked everyone, while there were others who found it annoying. "Your Highness!" A general came running to greet him with a respectful smile. He was one of the high-ranking officials who were summoned to the throne room yesterday. He witnessed Alaric's might, and it was deeply engraved in his mind. A few more officials came to greet him. Alaric politely responded to the group. Making friends with these people would be beneficial for his household, so he took his time to chat with them. "I don't see Her Majesty. Will she lead us in this expedition?" Alaric casually asked. "I heard that Her Majesty's personal guards, the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order, were mobilized last night, so there is a high chance that Her Majesty will be here," a general quickly responded. When they heard him mention this, everyone was stunned. The Crimson Phoenix Knights Order was a group composed of female warriors. There were only 50 of them, but they were all transcendent knights. Furthermore, their commander and deputy commander were mythical knights. They rarely appeared in public, and they were only sent out during important missions. Alaric rubbed his chin with a look of interest. He had also heard of rumors about this secretive Knights Order, but what he heard were just exaggerated rumors. "I heard that all members of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Orders are great beauties, and the most beautiful of them is their commander, Bai Seolwa," remarked a younger official with a cheeky laugh. "Right? I heard that she is even more beautiful than Her Majesty. I wonder if that's true." Another official piped in with a dreamy look. "What? Is there really someone more beautiful than Her Majesty?" Someone couldn't believe it. Alaric quietly listened on the sidelines, looking intrigued by the topic. Iskila was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Her beauty was on par with Ivana's, but the Empress had more charm and was also more elegant. Now, they were saying that there was someone better than her. Alaric found it hard to believe. "Her Majesty, the ultimate ruler of Veronica, is here," the loud voice of a messenger suddenly echoed. Everyone turned their heads in the direction of the voice. An entourage of female warriors dressed in crimson armor came into their view. They all rode a winged scarlet fox, a breed of fierce beast that was at the disaster grade at birth. Leading the entourage was a white-haired woman with pale white skin. She had refined facial features, like delicate porcelain, carefully molded into perfection. Unlike common Veronicans who had brown irises, hers were red. Her unique eyes made her look incredibly stunning. "So beautiful," one official mumbled with an absent-minded gaze. Alaric used his appraisal on the woman. "By Seolwa, Mythical Knight, EXP. 5722/10,000. Potential, SSS. Traits, Immortal Beauty L. Shield Mastery, SSS. Glaive Mastery, SSS. Close Combat, SSS. Horseback Riding, SS. Intuition, SS. Innate Divine Strength, S. Swordsmanship, S. Strength, 1221. Stamina, 1207. Agility, 1204. Vitality, 1288. Endurance, 1344. Mana, 1188. Oh! Alaric raised an eyebrow upon seeing her attributes and traits. As if sensing his gaze, Bai Seolwa glanced in his direction. They locked gazes for a moment, but she quickly looked away. Alaric moved his gaze to the woman next to Bai Seolwa. Using his appraisal, he discovered that she was Kangjian Jianhua, the deputy commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order. She wasn't a pure Veronican, which was quite obvious from her looks. She had blonde hair and gray irises. She was also way taller than the average Veronican woman. Kangjian Jianhua was also a great beauty, but she looked ordinary with Bai Seolwa right next to her. Her attributes and traits are at a high level too. These women are insanely strong. Alaric was surprised. He then inspected the members of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order. He found out that they were all powerful transcendent knights. In the middle of this entourage of beauties was a carriage with dragon and phoenix carvings. It was the imperial carriage of the Empress. Everyone watched with bated breath as the carriage door sprang open. Esquila Veronica, dressed in her crimson battle armor, stepped out of the vehicle. She looked heroic, like the female warrior in myths. Greetings to the ultimate ruler of Veronica. The soldiers greeted her with a salute, their voices reverberating across the landscape. Esquila scanned the troops. Her eyes stopped on Alaric for a split second. Only the two of them noticed this. The Empress, ever so graceful, walked as she observed the soldiers with a sharp gaze. Today, we will march to Almunson and take it back from the hands of the heretic cult. She paused her steps, and with her eyes narrowed, she spoke. This trip will be fraught with dangers, so prepare yourselves. Warriors of Veronica, set off at once. We will reclaim the land taken from us. Her awe-inspiring yet angelic voice drifted into everyone's ears. Yes, your majesty. The soldiers answered with vigor. Alaric could feel his blood pumping vigorously. He was infected by the atmosphere she created. So this is the effect of Esquila Veronica's impassioned speech. Let's go, he said to his subordinates as he jumped onto Zephyr's back. Yes, Lord Venerable. The Veronican troops led by the Empress began their march. An army with over 300,000 soldiers marched through the grassland, meeting the fresh rays of sunlight. The cold breeze of the morning air swept through them. It was time to destroy the heretic cult. In a dungeon somewhere in Almunson. How many days has it been since they took me here? Inside a dark prison, Park Sagwa leaned against the cold earthen wall. The light from the torches in the corridor barely illuminated the dark hellhole she was in. She wasn't alone in this prison. Other important officials and generals of Almunson were also imprisoned here, but they were all in terrible condition. Food is ready, a mocking voice echoed through the corridor. The clanking sounds of the chains could be heard as the prisoners scrambled over to the iron bars. The heretic cult didn't give them any food for days, so they were all starving. 3 people came into their view. 2 were pushing a cart that carried a large pot of soup, while the other was holding a ladle. The guy holding the ladle watched the prisoners with amusement. "Wait in line, you damn bastards," he shouted while hitting the iron bars with the ladle. With a snort, he spat a mouthful of phlegm on the soup pot. He then grabbed a bowl and half-filled it with the soup. "Here's your food. Who's eating first?" He laughed as he put the bowl on the food port. The prisoners were disgusted. They were hungry, but they would never eat something that had been spat on by someone. "You disgusting vermin! How dare you humiliate the officials of Veronica like this? We may be your prisoners, but you should provide us with clean water and food," shouted an old official of Almunson. The other prisoners also voiced out their anger, but this didn't prove to be effective. "So you don't want to eat, huh? All right, that's your choice." The man holding the ladle shrugged with an unconcerned smile. "You're lucky that I'm a kind man. I will place your bowls here, so just grab them if you feel like eating." He filled several more bowls with the soup and added his spit to each bowl. The prisoners saw this, making them even more agitated. "Damn bastard! If I ever get out of this shithole, I will find you first and skin you alive," roared a transcendent knight from House Park, his eyes brimming with killing intent. The man holding the ladle put on a scared look as he responded in a teasing voice. "So scary. Ha ha ha. You want to escape from here? In your dreams, dumbass. Ha ha ha. This lord is called Fu-Tayson. If you want revenge, come and find me. Ha ha ha." Fu-Tayson and the other mocked the prisoners. Park Sagwa glared at the trio. Her aura suddenly gushed out, but it quickly died down. Fu-Tayson was momentarily scared, but he chuckled when he remembered that Park Sagwa was tied in mithril chains. Who would have thought that the renowned Bloody Iris would have such a day? Park Sagwa, you were an unattainable figure to us, but look at you now, suffering in this gloomy dungeon with all these smelly officials. Ha ha ha. Park Sagwa stared deeply at them and muttered in a cold voice. You'd better watch yourselves. I will come for you even if it kills me. Fu Taisen nervously chuckled. Let's go. He snorted as he left with his subordinates. After they left, the prisoners hurled insults at them. Those bastards! I will kill them. Cult members. I will crush them if I escape this place. Park Sagwa grabbed onto the wound on her abdomen, grimacing. If it weren't for that guy, this wouldn't have happened. I thought only the cult leader would be a threat to us, but there is another monster in the heretic cult other than him. Your Grace, are you all right? A survivor from House Park rushed to her side with a look of concern. Park Sagwa raised her hand. I'm fine. This is no big deal. But your wounds. Inside the main mansion of House Park, a man who looked to be in his late 40s stood on the balcony, overlooking the picturesque landscape with an indifferent expression. At long last, we finally took the first step of our grand plan. He muttered, Lord Rin, I have taken the demonic sword. A warrior came, holding a blood-red sword in his hands with great caution. Rin Aspen turned around and looked at the sword. He was fascinated by the sword's evil aura. Good work. He grabbed the sword and unsheathed it. Looking at its blood-red blade, he marveled. How gorgeous! I have been searching for you all this time. He smiled. Suddenly, he swung the sword, cutting off the head of the warrior who came to deliver it. Whoosh! The warrior didn't even know how he died. He only saw his own headless corpse before his vision darkened. In the next moment, something horrifying happened. The blood from the warrior's corpse was sucked in by the blood-red sword. So this is the power of the demonic sword. How beautiful! Rin Aspen cackled as he watched the gruesome scene with excitement. Soon, the warrior's body dried up and became a mummified corpse. Rin Aspen could feel the sword trembling, as if it were shaking in excitement after finally devouring blood from years of starvation. Are you exhilarated? He mumbled. Follow me. I will allow you to devour the blood of our enemies. The sword produced a keening sound as if it were responding to his request. Is that a sign of agreement? Rin Aspen narrowed his eyes with a smirk on his face. A few days later, the army led by the Empress finally arrived at the borders of Ulmunson. The soldiers were exhausted because they had been marching without rest, but no one complained. They knew that if they were to delay, more horrible things would be done to the residents of Ulmunson. At this moment, Alaric jumped off Zephyr's back with his eyebrows furrowed. The soldiers are exhausted. If we fight the heretic cult, they wouldn't have the energy for a prolonged battle. The Empress should have realized this too. Listen up, warriors of Veronica. The Empress's voice suddenly echoed like thunder. The tired warriors adjusted their postures, squeezing out their energies to stand firmly. I know you are tired, but our people have suffered for days at the hands of the heretic cult. As the Blade of Veronica, it is our duty to kill the enemies and ensure the safety of our people. We cannot allow them to suffer for another day. We must strike now. We will end this quickly so we can rest tonight. Her words invigorated the soldiers. Alaric frowned upon seeing this. She is impatient. She should have allowed her troops to rest for a few hours. Thinking about this, he walked towards the Empress, intending to confront her about the situation. Galliner and the others quietly followed him. The Crimson Phoenix Knights order sensed them approaching. Kangjian Jianhua, the deputy commander, stepped forward to block their path. Stop right there. You are not permitted to come close to Her Majesty without her approval. Alaric stared at her with a deep frown. I need to speak with Her Majesty. This is important. Kangjian Jianhua didn't budge, but the Empress suddenly spoke. Let him come. Hearing this, the stubborn deputy commander reluctantly stepped aside, but she only permitted Alaric. Only His Highness can approach Her Majesty. The rest of you will have to stay here. Alaric signaled to his subordinates. He also sent Nivis a warning look. When he passed by Kangjian Jianhua, he heard her snorting with displeasure, but Alaric ignored her. He walked towards the Empress and stopped in front of her. Your Majesty, I apologize for this, but may I speak freely? The commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order stood next to the Empress. Alaric took a glance at her before he looked away. There were more important matters at hand. He could admire her beauty next time. The Empress nodded indifferently. All right, you may speak freely. Alaric took a deep breath and spoke. Your Majesty, we should allow the troops to get some rest before charging towards Ulmunson. With their condition, they wouldn't last long. He shook his head with a grave look. Alaric had experienced numerous battles. A single mistake could lead to their defeat. He didn't want the Empress to sacrifice her troops. The Empress turned around and looked at the tall walls of Ulmunson as she replied. I understand your concern, but I cannot allow my people to suffer any further. But your soldiers are also your people, your Majesty. Please reconsider. Alaric reminded her. The Empress hesitated. She was so engulfed in her rage that she had almost made a terrible decision. Fine, she mumbled. She turned her head to Bai Sealwa and commanded her. Deliver the message to the troops. They are to rest for 4 hours. Bai Sealwa acknowledged the command with a bow. Your servant obeys. Before she left, she took a curious look at Alaric. When she passed by him, her fragrant scent lingered in the air. While the troops were resting, Alaric received the Empress's summons. He followed the messenger sent by the Empress, and he later found himself in front of a tent. Her Majesty is waiting for you inside. The messenger gestured at him to enter the tent. Alaric nodded without saying a word. Galliner and Sekus wanted to follow him inside, but the guards outside the tent didn't allow them to enter. Only His Highness is permitted inside. The two you will have to remain here. Hearing this, Alaric signaled at them and said, Wait here. I will be all right. Sekus and Galliner acknowledged his instructions. They saluted and stood outside the tent to wait for him. Upon stepping inside, Alaric saw the Empress and a few more people sitting before a round table with solemn faces. The Grand Commander, Bai Sealwa, Kangjian Jianhua, and a 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster who he was unfamiliar with was there. Alaric used his appraisal on the unknown guy. His name was Min Taehyun, an old man who looked to be in his 60s. He had a slender physique, like a fragile scholar with no combat prowess. However, this guy was no slouch. In terms of overall combat abilities, he was on the same level as Ignatius Firecrest. The level of Veronica's upper echelons is on another scale. Alaric furrowed his eyebrows as he calmly assessed the difference between these people and the venerables of Astania. If it weren't for the heretic cult, Veronica would have been the first one to attack Astania. He thought to himself. He had seen the overwhelming strength of the experts in this nation. They also possessed a huge number of loyal warriors who were ready to die for their country. Alaric could already imagine the amount of bloodshed that would be inflicted if Astania were to go into war against Veronica. He took a deep breath to organize his thoughts. I must make them feel indebted to Astania. That is the only way to end the decade-long hatred between the two nations. Please sit down, Your Highness. The Empress nodded to him as she motioned for him to take the vacant seat in between Min Taehyun and Kangjian Jianhua. Alaric nodded and calmly took his seat. Min Taehyun turned to him and sent him a friendly smile. Alaric returned the gesture and also smiled at him. He found this guy more approachable than the two ladies from the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order. Before we begin, let me introduce you to my most trusted confidants. The gentleman to your right is Min Taehyun. He is the Duke of Bulgassaran, a mighty 4-ringed beast soul grandmaster. The Empress proudly introduced. Min Taehyun used the greeting gesture of the Astanians by cupping his fists to Alaric. It's an honor to meet the renowned Alaric Silversword. The honor is mine, Lord Taehyun. Alaric exchanged pleasantries with the old man. They wanted to speak some more, but the Empress cut them off. To your left is the Deputy Commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order, Kangjian Jianhua. She is a mythical knight. Kangjian Jianhua reluctantly cupped her fists to greet Alaric. Looking her expression, Alaric chuckled in amusement. It's an honor, Deputy Commander Kangjian. Amen. Kangjian Jianhua hummed in response. She couldn't be bothered to exchange pleasantries with him. The Empress introduced him to the last person. And this is the commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order, Bai Seohwa. Bai Seohwa was a silent woman, but she wasn't as stubborn as her deputy. She looked at Alaric and nodded to him. Alaric smiled at her. It's an honor to meet you, Commander Bai. Let's cut the introductions short. We can interact more after we resolve the pressing issues. The Empress clapped her hands to get their attention. We have received the reports from the remnants of the Duchess's warriors. According to them, the heretic cult has 150,000 followers inside Ulmunson. They are armed and dangerous, she emphasized with a stern look. Although they are not strictly trained in military tactics, they are fearless in the face of death, and they have this sense of violence that makes them stronger than common soldiers. So they are just a ragtag bunch of violent lunatics. Kangjian Jianhua sneered with her arms crossed. Your Majesty, please give me 50,000 troops to command. That will be enough to destroy those vermins, she confidently stated. Kangjian Jianhua, you are being disrespectful to Her Majesty. Bai Seohwa sent her deputy a look of reproach. Kangjian Jianhua realized her mistake and quickly apologized. I apologize for my impertinence, Your Majesty. The Empress didn't seem to mind this. She treated these two ladies as her sisters, so she wasn't angered by Kangjian Jianhua's attitude. She waved her hand and replied, It's fine, but we should proceed with more caution. The heretic cult has sent Rin Aspen and 2 more venerables to conquer Ulmunson. To emerge victorious against them, we must fight as one, the Empress exclaimed. When they heard her mention the name Rin Aspen, the faces of the 3 were drained of color. Only Alaric sat there with a confused expression. Rin Aspen? Just who is that person that he could strike fear to these experts? He was curious. As if sensing his curiosity, the Empress said, Rin Aspen was once a general of Veronica. He served the late emperor of the nation, but after I killed that person, Rin Aspen vanished into thin air. He later reappeared as a member of the heretic cult. He is not someone that we can take lightly, she added. I see. Alaric rubbed his chin thoughtfully. The other 2 venerables are not as famous as him. We also don't have much information about them. We only know that they came to Veronica with the cult leader. The Empress tapped her fingers on the table and said, I will handle Rin Aspen. I want the 4 of you to deal with those 2. We obey Your Majesty's commands. Seeing that Alaric wasn't responding, the Empress looked at him and asked, What do you think, Your Highness? Alaric took a deep breath and replied, I will follow your instructions. Aeschylus smiled faintly. Good. Now listen carefully. This is how our armies should move. For hours later, the troops went into formation. Alaric and his subordinates were placed in the Central Army with the vanguard unit led by the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order. Their task was to storm the main entrance where the heretic cult had placed most of their troops. At this moment, Alaric was riding on a horse he had gotten from the Imperial Guards. He looked at the distant city grimly, waiting for the central commander's signal to charge. Everyone waited patiently while gripping their weapons tightly. Central Army, charge. Bai Seohwa's voice echoed like a beautiful war melody. She rode her mount as she pointed her weapon forward, glaring at their target with a fierce look. Follow the commander, Kangjian Jianhua roared, following closely behind her commander. The members of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order issued bell-like war cries as they charged with great momentum. The Central Army was the first to advance, signaling the beginning of the battle. Halfway through their charge, huge boulders came flying overhead and crushed into their soldiers with overwhelming force. Boom! 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 They are using the city's artillery. Brace yourselves for impact, Kangjian Jianhua shouted to the troops. To minimize casualties, the Transcendent Knights targeted the boulders and the artillery shells before they could hit the ground. Alaric wasn't idle either. He casually brandished his swords, cutting the huge boulders into tiny fragments. The soldiers of Veronica were awed by his power, boosting their morale to the highest levels. Continue advancing, Alaric shouted. He then squeezed his legs, urging his horse to move faster. He could already see the enemy troops atop the walls. They seemed to be preparing for another round of artillery attacks. "Watch out! They still have ammunition," he warned the troops, his face looking grim. "We didn't bring any siege machines, so we need to climb up the walls and open the gates from the inside," he thought to himself. The heretic cult fired artillery shells upon them, but with the efforts of the Transcendents, they managed to keep the losses to a minimum. The troops encountered traps along the way, but they weren't much of a threat. Luckily, the heretic cult didn't have much time to set up traps. We would have suffered heavy losses here. Suddenly, the main gate sprang open. A large number of enemy troops came pouring out of the gate. Alaric assessed them with a frown. Most of them are cavalry and the rest are infantrymen. With a cold snort, he kicked his horse's belly, spurring it to rush forward. He raised his short sword and bellowed, "On me! Crush them! Kill them all!" The Veronican troops responded to his call. In the next moment, a powerful collision between the two armies broke out. Bodies flew left and right as screams echoed in all directions. It was a brutal sight, but the soldiers didn't seem to be affected by it. They pushed forward without fear, waving their weapons at their enemies. Alaric was at the epicenter of the battle. He was surrounded by enemies from all sides. "Come at me, vermins of the heretic cult!" he cried out as he brandished his swords with overwhelming power. With a series of slashes, he dismembered the bodies of the enemy soldiers who tried to block his path. "Ah! My hand! Ah!" Alaric's armor was covered in blood. The nauseating metallic scent was strong, but as a war veteran, he was already used to this. He didn't even bother to wipe off the blood that splashed on his face. He charged into the enemy lines without stopping. He was like an unstoppable beast. Whoever tried to block his path ended up dying under his swords. Alaric left a trail of blood in his wake. "Our targets are not here. Do they intend to weaken us before showing up?" He furrowed his eyebrows as he pulled the reins of his horse. He scanned the battlefield, but he couldn't find the enemy venerables. They were nowhere in sight. Inside the dungeon somewhere in Almunson, the prisoners were still unaware that the reinforcement troops had already engaged with the soldiers of the heretic cult. "Will someone come to save us?" one of the prisoners mumbled. "Of course. Her Majesty will never allow her subjects to be mistreated like this. I'm sure Her Majesty will storm Almunson with hundreds of thousands of soldiers," a captive general snorted. Park Sagwa could hear them clearly, but she didn't join their conversation. With her mana sealed, she couldn't heal the wounds inflicted upon her, so she had to preserve her strength. "What do they intend to do with us?" She had a bad feeling ever since they had been captured. She noticed that only those above the elite knights were here. The rest had already been taken to a separate location, their fates uncertain. Suddenly, they heard a series of footsteps from the corridor. The prisoners turned their heads and saw an old man with a gnarly scar on his face. Seeing this person, the prisoners were terrified. Even the Duchess, Park Sagwa, revealed a look of fear. Rin Aspen was said to be a vicious swordsman, but this guy right here was even more dangerous. They had seen him dissecting the corpses of their fallen comrades. It was something that would never be erased from their minds. "Kakik, why are you looking at me with those faces? Do I look ugly?" With a smirk, the old man grabbed the iron bars and looked at the terrified prisoners. "What do you want from us?" a captive general asked with a frown. The old man rubbed his chin and replied with an eerie smile. "I wonder. Bring that guy to me." He gestured to the heretic cult members who had followed him. "Gladly, my lord." It so happened that one of them was Fu Tayson, the guy who had been mistreating them. Fu Tayson grinned as he opened the prison door. As soon as the door was opened, a few prisoners pounced at him with furious faces. "I will kill you, Fu Tayson. Die, bastard." Fu Tayson sneered. He already expected this kind of reaction from them. He lifted his foot and released a couple of kicks that sent the attacking prisoners flying. "Pa! Pa! Pa! With your mana sealed, What can you idiots do to me? He laughed with disdain. Shut your mouth, you damn bastard. Release me if you have the balls. Fu Tayson ignored their insults and walked towards the guy pointed out by the old man. Come with me if you don't want to get hurt. He grabbed the captive general and tried to drag him out of the cell, but the latter suddenly spat a mouthful of saliva at his face. 2. Veins protruded on Fu Tayson's face. He grabbed the captive general by the neck and muttered, Do you think I wouldn't kill you? The captive general squirmed as he gasped for breath. It looked like he was struggling, but he didn't beg for mercy. Release the general, you bastard. A group of prisoners rushed towards him, but they were all subdued by the members of the heretic cult. Fu Tayson, don't kill him. I still need them all alive for my experiments. The old man's impatient voice drifted into their ears. Fu Tayson immediately released the general's neck with a snort. You're lucky. He grabbed the man's arm and dragged him out of the cell. What do you intend to do with him, Lord San? Fu Tayson asked with a curious look. The old man named Sun sent him a deep look and replied, Just watch and you'll know. He grabbed something from his inner pocket and stuffed it into the general's mouth. Kakik! The old man cackled eerily. What did you make me eat? The general was alarmed. He tried to spit out the thing that was forced into his throat, but it had already dissolved in his stomach. What you just ate is the result of my decade-long research. Kakik, just wait for a minute. It should take effect soon. Sen laughed with a look of excitement. The general became more anxious with his words. You damn old man. Give me the antidote. He stood up and grabbed the old man by the collar. Hey, what do you think you're doing? Fu Tayson was about to interfere, but the old man, San, stopped him with a grin. Suddenly, the captive general's face became unsightly. He could feel an unusual sensation on his chest. What is to dash? His words were cut off as a sudden burst of pain struck his head. He grabbed his head and knelt on the ground, screaming. Ah! Seeing this, Sun burst into peals of laughter. It's happening, he exclaimed. The prisoners could only watch their comrade suffer all by himself, unable to do anything. They hurled threats at the old man, but their words fell on deaf ears. After some time, the general's screams died out. A massive change also occurred in his body. His skin turned a shade darker with patches of purple, looking incredibly hideous. Roar! A beast-like roar came out of his mouth. Excellent! It worked! Sen laughed with pure joy. In the next moment, the general burst with unknown power and broke free from his restraints. He then pounced on Fu Tayson, who was standing next to him. Roar! Fu Tayson was caught off guard, but he still managed to react in time. He unsheathed his weapon and thrust it at the general's chest. The general didn't evade his sword, so it penetrated through his chest and out of his back. KHSHK. However, the general didn't seem to feel any pain. He roared and grabbed onto Fu Tayson's arm like an iron clamp. How dare you! Fu Tayson unleashed his mana in an attempt to shake off the general, but the guy stuck to him like glue. Shit! Where did he get this strength? In their struggle, the general managed to take a bite of his flesh. He pulled his head and tore off a huge chunk of flesh and blood, making Fu Tayson scream with agony. Lord Sen, help me! He cried out while looking at the old man. The other members of the heretic cult also tried to pull the general away from his body, but the guy didn't even budge. Useless fool! San clicked his tongue in annoyance. He then stepped forward and grabbed the general by the neck. With a strong tug, he managed to separate the general from Fu Tayson. Tie him up! He shouted to the members of the heretic cult. Yes, my lord! While the old man was holding the general, they tied his limbs with thick mithril chains. It took them great effort to restrain him. Fu Tayson put pressure on his bleeding shoulder to stop the blood from flowing. With a pale face, he asked the old man, What happened to him, Lord Sen? The old man grinned and replied with excitement. The pill converted his mana into raw power. It forcefully changed the structure of his body to achieve the peak of humanity. In exchange for that power, it turned him into a mindless monster. It's fascinating, isn't it? Fu Tayson frowned at his words. For your bullshit research, I almost got killed. Damn. He was furious, but he didn't dare show it on his face. He was afraid that the old man would force him to swallow the pill if he were to show even a trace of anger. San turned his head to the prisoners and mumbled with an eerie smile. Wouldn't it be fun to see the Empress fight her own loyal subjects? Kakik. Just the thought of it makes me excited. Kakik. Hearing this, the prisoners were left terrified. They had seen the power of the drug. Even the general, who was a transcendent knight, fell victim to its terrible effects. You demon! You will face retribution for this demonic behavior, exclaimed an old official who couldn't stand the situation. Sun grinned at him and said, Bring him out. He will be the next one to taste this awesome creation of mine. Kakik! The prisoners turned pale with fear. The old official was dragged out of the cell and was forced to swallow the demonic pill. Unlike the general, who lasted for some time, the old official became a mad monster in just a quarter of a minute. The members of the heretic cult restrained him so he couldn't attack them. Roar! The prisoners were terrified. 2 of their comrades had been forcefully turned into mindless beasts. The thought of them being forced to become one filled them with profound fear. Weren't you guys shouting earlier? What happened? Kakik! San grabbed the iron bars as he scanned the faces of the prisoners. Suddenly, his eyes stopped on Park Sagwa, who was glaring at him with intense fury. Oh my! I like that stubborn look in your eyes. Your Grace. Kakik! The old man grinned and waved his hands at his subordinates. Bring her out. She will be next. Kakik! Hearing this, the prisoners immediately circled the Duchess. No, not Her Grace. I will do it instead. One of the remaining captive generals offered himself with a pleading look. Some officials also volunteered to take the demonic pill. San furrowed his eyebrows. For how long do you intend to hide behind your subordinates? Park Sagwa? The Duchess stared deeply at him, her eyes radiating with intense hatred. Step back, all of you. She stepped forward without fear. She was the Duchess of House Park, a respected venerable of Veronica. She would never yield to the members of the heretic cult. San clicked his tongue. The Duchess's stubbornness made him a bit annoyed. Hold on. He raised his hand. Fu Tayson and the heretic cult members backed down at his signal. The old man walked towards the Duchess and stopped just a few inches from her. He tilted his head and observed the emotional fluctuations in her eyes. However, the Duchess's eyes remained serene, as if she were unafraid of what was about to happen. He cupped her chin and let out a wicked laugh. Let's see how long you can keep that stubborn facade. Kakik! Park Sagwa was disgusted. She pulled her head to free herself from his touch. She then spat on his face and muttered, Don't touch me, you disgusting old shitface. Sen's smile deepened. He licked her spit and commanded, Strip her naked and show them how manly the members of the heretic cult are. Hearing this, the Duchess gritted her teeth, her eyes revealing a trace of panic. The prisoners were both terrified and furious. Hey, you old fart! Aren't you afraid of Her Majesty's wrath? Don't you dare touch Her Grace with your filthy hands. Fu Tayson and the members of the heretic cult smiled evilly as they tore the Duchess's clothes off. Stop! Stop, you beasts! Don't touch her! The prisoners couldn't bear to see the Duchess being humiliated in front of them. They were furious, but there was nothing they could do. The others looked away, trembling, their faces filled with guilt and remorse. Why, Your Grace? San watched the members of the heretic cult take turns to force themselves upon the Duchess's body. Kakik! Get her to swallow the pill once you are done playing with her. He tossed the demonic pill to Fu Tayson. Yes, my lord. Meanwhile, the battle outside the city was becoming increasingly fierce. The left wing and the right wing of the Veronican army launched an attack on the east and west gates respectively. It was an all-out assault against the forces of the heretic cult. Do they really intend to let their troops die meaninglessly? Alaric charged straight into the heart of the enemy's formation, but he still couldn't find the enemy venerables. With the absence of the enemy's top powerhouses, the Veronican army managed to force its way into the city in just an hour. The warriors of the heretic cult couldn't stop them, but they still fought with fervor. "These bloody lunatics! Do they not fear death?" exclaimed the deputy commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order, Kangjian Jianhua. The streets near the gates were already filled with the corpses of the enemy soldiers. The overwhelming stench of blood lingered in the air. It was a one-sided massacre, but the heretic cult army didn't seem to have the intention to retreat. They fought with reckless abandon. They charged at the Veronican army with no proper formation. It was sheer madness and insanity. "Push forward. We must save the residents of Ulmunson." After another hour, the heretic cult army was annihilated, their corpses strewn across the streets. "We must hurry. They still have the Duchess and the others," shouted Kangjian Jianhua to the troops. Everyone rushed to the estate of House Park, but their advance came to an abrupt halt when they saw an army barricading the road. "Enemy troops up ahead. Archers, fire at my signal." Bai Seohua raised her hand, signaling a change in formation. The trained soldiers moved into formation in an orderly manner. The archers stepped forward and released their arrows at the enemy troops. Su! 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 They were expecting an easy battle, but something unexpected happened. The thousands of arrows that blotted the sky were stopped by an unknown force. The first one to notice the abnormality was the Empress, who had just regrouped with the Central Army. "They are here," she murmured with a frown. "Shield bearers, forward. Protect your comrades," she commanded with a wave of her hand. Just as her voice fell, the arrows that were suspended in the sky fell upon them. "Su! Su! Su!" The Empress's timely command saved the troops, but they still suffered some casualties. A few unlucky warriors were pierced by the arrows, killing them on the spot. At this moment, Alaric glanced in a certain direction and locked his eyes on someone from the enemy's side. Because of the distance between them, he couldn't see the enemy's face clearly, but his appraisal trait allowed him to recognize the enemy's power. "So they have come. Tear through their barricade," the Empress roared as she valiantly led the charge. The cavalrymen followed closely behind her, forming a triangle with her as the spearhead. "Crush their flimsy barricades," shouted the Veronican troops as they gathered their strength in preparation for the impact. Bang! The cavalrymen slammed into the hastily made barricades with overwhelming force, crushing them upon contact. The enemy troops collided with the Veronican army, but they could not stop their momentum. At this moment, Alaric didn't even need to do much. He just followed behind the cavalrymen and watched them demolish the enemy troops. However, he felt that something was wrong with the enemy forces. They were much weaker than the soldiers they fought at the walls. "Something feels off." He frowned. Out of instinct, he used his appraisal on the enemy soldiers and realized that most of them were just ordinary people. He couldn't understand why the heretic cult would use the ordinary followers to fight with the Veronican army. It was then that something occurred to him. Hold on. We should have annihilated most of their soldiers. How come they still have this many soldiers? The information they got from the remnants of House Park didn't match the actual number of enemies. He pulled the reins of his horse and looked at the scattered corpses on the ground. Using the tip of his sword, he removed the helmet of a fallen enemy soldier. To his shock, he saw the young face of someone who seemed to be in his mid-teens. Is he really a member of the heretic cult's army? How could someone this young? He got down from his horse and went to another corpse. He lifted the helmet, but this time he saw a young woman in her late teens. The cult is using ordinary followers as cannon fodder? The discovery made him furious and baffled at the same time. No sane person would volunteer as cannon fodder. I have a bad feeling about this. I need to warn Her Majesty. He jumped onto his horse and shouted. Stop! There is something wrong with the enemy troops. He used mana to amplify his voice so everyone heard him clearly. The Veronican army was surprised by his words. The Empress and the other venerables were also stunned. What do you mean, Alaric? The Empress frowned as she looked at him. Alaric pointed at the corpses and replied, I think they are using ordinary people as cannon fodder. The heretic cult must have used some despicable methods to force these people to join the war. His words made the Empress's face fall. She was so focused on destroying the enemies that she didn't notice these small details. She quickly amplified her perception using her mana and was shaken when she realized that most of the corpses were young people. What have we done? The Veronican army went to check the corpses and were shocked when they found out that Alaric was telling the truth. Suddenly, they heard someone bursting into laughter. Everyone turned their heads in the same direction and saw a middle-aged man with short brown hair. He had an amused look in his eyes as if he was enjoying the situation. It took you that long to notice it? Ha ha ha. You! What is going on here? The Empress gripped her sword tightly as she stared coldly at the man. The man looked at her and let out a wide grin as he responded. Haven't you noticed it? Why do you think the city is empty? Have you found a resident since coming here? Hearing this, everyone's eyes widened as it finally dawned on them. Ha ha ha. The people you desperately wanted to protect ended up dying in your hands. The man face-bombed himself as he laughed raucously. The Empress felt her heart tightening. What is he saying? This can't be. She looked at the dead enemy soldiers with an absent-minded gaze. Some of the soldiers of the Veronican army fell on their knees, their faces filled with deep remorse. No! We killed our own people. The morale of the troops fell to rock bottom. No one wanted to fight anymore. Seeing this, the middle-aged man narrowed his eyes and made a hand gesture while using his psychokinetic power to steal everyone's weapons. The sudden pulling force caught the Veronican army by surprise. Most of them couldn't hold onto their weapons and were quickly disarmed. Oh no! My sword! My spear! Thousands of weapons hovered in the sky. Ha ha ha! Glory to the heretic cult! The middle-aged man laughed coldly as he controlled the weapons through his mind. This was his power, a psychokinetic ability that he had integrated from a catastrophe-grade monster. As long as he had enough mana, he could control any object with just a thought. The tens of thousands of weapons struck the Veronican soldiers, killing thousands of them in just a matter of seconds. The others quickly reacted and defended themselves from the rain of weapons. Screams of agony echoed following that unexpected attack. You despicable vermin! I will kill you! Kangjian Jianhua rushed towards the middle-aged man while gathering mana into her spear. The middle-aged man sneered. You want to kill me? You need more than dash. He couldn't finish his words because he suddenly sensed a wave of danger behind him. He instinctively ducked his head. Whoosh! He evaded a glaive by a hair's breadth. When did she? He saw a white-haired woman with red eyes, fiercely brandishing her glaive at him. Bai Seol-Hua! He shouted, his face covered in sweat. That strike nearly killed him. If he were even a split second late, his head would have been cut off. Bai Seol-Hua's eyes were seething with fury. She pointed her glaive at him and muttered, You will pay for this, dog of the heretic cult. Whoosh! Her figure blurred as she moved with lightning speed. The middle-aged man could not follow her movements. Shit! She is too fast. I need to retreat. He quickly turned around, but before he could take a step, he saw Kangjian Jianhua's sword just half a foot away from his chest. Clang! A figure appeared in front of Kangjian Jianhua, blocking her sword, which was about to stab her target. Clang! It was a middle-aged man with handsome facial features. He looked expressionless like a puppet with no emotion. Rin Aspen! It's you! A grim look flashed in Kangjian Jianhua's eyes. She instinctively backed away while keeping her eyes on the newcomer. Rin Aspen let out a smile. To think that I would see all the members of the Crimson Phoenix Knights Order. Sensing his invasive gaze, Kangjian Jianhua was disgusted. You disgusting vermin! Where did you lock up her grace? She roared, her anger was evident. Do you mean that bitch, Park Sagwa? Rin Aspen grinned. I think that old man must be playing with her right now. Hearing this, Kangjian Jianhua and the others were furious. What did you say? Kangjian Jianhua was about to charge when Bai Seol-Hua grabbed her shoulder. He is trying to get on your head. Control your emotions, Deputy Commander. Kangjian Jianhua took a deep breath and nodded. It took her great effort to calm her agitation. "I understand, Commander." Meanwhile, Alaric used his appraisal on the man and was shocked to see his stats. He is probably stronger than Bai Seol-Hwa, but he isn't even the cult leader. Then just how strong is the leader of the heretic cult? Alaric frowned the more he thought about it. Rin Aspen. Where is the Duchess? The Empress appeared in front of Alaric, her cold voice echoing across the streets. Rin Aspen smiled at the Empress, seemingly unafraid of her. "You have become more beautiful, Your Majesty. Enough with your idle talk and answer my question." The Empress furrowed her eyebrows. The heretic cult's despicable methods brought her immense fury. She could barely contain the anger in her heart. Rin Aspen shrugged. "I already told you, didn't I?" He shook his head and added with a chuckle. "Don't worry, you will get to see her soon." After saying those words, he grabbed the middle-aged venerable and escaped into the alleys. "Commander Bai, get your troops to chase them," the Empress commanded. "Yes, Your Majesty." Bai Seol-Hwa sent a signal to the Crimson Phoenix Knights' order, mobilizing them to chase after the escaping enemy venerables. Alaric summoned Zephyr with a bird-like whistle. He then jumped onto its back and told it to chase the enemies. "Follow them." While they were chasing Rin Aspen and the other venerable, Min Taehyun temporarily took command of the Veronican army. He was also a venerable, so the army followed his orders without complaint. "Chongmin, didn't I tell you to wait for instructions before sending out your troops?" Rin Aspen scolded his comrade with a glare. They were now in a precarious situation because of this guy's whimsical decisions. If he weren't an important member of the cult, Rin Aspen would have already abandoned him. Chongmin chuckled awkwardly. "I will deal with you later. If you don't want to die, then you'd better run faster. A strong beast is chasing us." Rin Aspen could sense the presence of the approaching monster. Hearing this, Chongmin immediately used his mana to increase his speed. Roar! A mighty roar resounded above the sky. Rin Aspen looked up and saw a huge draconic lion carrying a lone man. He narrowed his eyes as he observed the figure standing on top of the creature. That must be Alaric's Silversword. Suddenly, the draconic lion swooped down and spat out a burst of flames. Whoosh! Rin Aspen swung the demonic sword, extinguishing the flame that was headed in their direction. Using its momentum, the draconic lion brandished its claws at them. Roar! Rin Aspen immediately swung the demonic sword to block its claws. Clang! At this moment, Alaric jumped off Zephyr's back and lunged at the weaker target. Chongmin. "Hold him off, Zephyr!" he shouted as he performed a downward slash with two swords. Whoosh! Whoosh! "How dare you underestimate me, kid!" Chongmin snorted and deflected his swords with a couple of swings. Clang! 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 Alaric calmly waved his swords. "He has higher attributes than mine, but my swordsmanship is miles better. I also have the power of destruction." He didn't immediately use the power of destruction. It would take a great amount of time to summon that power, so he used his ice domain to hinder his opponent's movement. The temperature dropped all of a sudden and the surrounding terrain gradually froze up. "You are not the only one with a domain." Seeing this, Chongmin unleashed his own domain. There were no visible changes in the surroundings, but Alaric sensed that the mana all over the city was converging towards his opponent. Could it be? In his quest to find information about the destruction element, he discovered many kinds of unusual and unique domains. Mana domain. This domain only had one effect, and it was to give the summoner a near unlimited amount of mana. It was the perfect domain for Chongmin, who had the psychokinetic integrated monster trait. As the mana converged around him, Chongmin used his power to destroy the frozen terrain. He then controlled the destroyed ice fragments and threw them in Alaric's direction. "I can't control the ice that is under his psychokinetic influence." Alaric frowned as he quickly summoned a wall of ice around him. Bang! 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 It was like he was being bombarded with an unlimited number of artillery shells. Seeing the ice wall cracking under the intense bombardment, Alaric summoned the ice warriors to confuse his opponent. He then adjusted his posture, preparing to use an ultimate sword technique at the right moment. Chong Min sneered upon seeing the ice warriors charging towards him. "Is this your pathetic effort to buy yourself some time?" With a few slashes of his sword, he destroyed the ice warriors. He then used his power to control the fragments of ice. Bang! 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 When the ice wall broke apart, a blurry figure rushed out and pounced on Chong Min. It was Alaric. He used a sword technique to unleash a fatal strike against his opponent. Chong Min, with his near-unlimited mana, used his psychokinetic abilities to form a shield of ice before him. Alaric's sword struck the ice shield, breaking it apart and heading straight for Chong Min's chest. How? Chong Min was taken by surprise. He didn't expect Alaric to be this powerful for someone who had just stepped into the realm of the Venerables. He hastily lifted his sword to block Alaric's attack. Clang! He somehow managed to block Alaric's sword, but the force behind his attack sent Chong Min flying into the air. He slammed heavily into the frozen wall and fell to the ground with a thud. Chong Min gritted his teeth as he picked himself up. His arms were trembling and he could hardly grip his sword. He looked at the young venerable who was approaching him like a ghost and immediately felt a wave of fear. I can't beat him. His swordsmanship is unusually powerful. When their swords clashed, he sensed the huge disparity in their skills. He thought that he had already mastered the sword, but Alaric's swordsmanship was on another level. Whoosh! Alaric suddenly appeared in front of him and delivered another slash. Gritting his teeth, Chong Min pushed himself to the limits. He exerted his full power to deflect Alaric's sword. He also used his psychokinetic powers to bombard Alaric with shards of ice. Clang! 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 It's time. Alaric finally felt the destruction domain reacting with his mana. With another mighty slash, he summoned the void. What is this? Chong Min was stunned. The surrounding was suddenly covered in rifts, like small doors leading to the underworld. In his panic, he failed to discover that one of these rifts was just right behind him. When he took a step back, he felt a sharp pain in his leg. He looked down as soon as the pain registered, and to his horror, he saw that one of his legs was missing. How? Don't touch those rifts, you idiot! Rin Aspen's voice drifted into his ears, pulling back his senses. The rifts. He looked around, trying to search for an escape route, but Alaric didn't give him any chance. Where do you think you're going? A cold voice echoed behind Chong Min. Shit! Chong Min quickly turned around and instinctively swung his sword. Whoosh! With a snort, Alaric calmly evaded the flimsy slash and swung his short sword. KHSHK. His sword cut into Chong Min's chest, tearing off a huge chunk of his flesh. Arg! Chong Min channeled his mana and guided them to stop his bleeding. The attack left him with a serious wound that almost cut off his control of the mana domain. If my mana domain collapses, that would be the end of me. Miraculously, the wounds on his chest had stopped bleeding, but this was only temporary. He was continuously draining mana to close up his wounds, and it was taking a huge toll on his mind. Alaric looked at his opponent and said, You are quite resilient. I'll give you that, but we both know how this would end. He walked forward, calmly approaching Chong Min. Stop resisting, and I will give you a quick death. Hearing this, Chong Min glared at him with a dagger-like gaze. He turned his head to Din Aspen, who was battling with the draconic lion, and shouted, Lord Rin, take my blood. That should be enough to awaken the demonic sword's power. Demonic sword? Alaric was bewildered, but then he suddenly recalled something. Hold on. Now I remember it. It's the sword with a nascent soul. When he visited the Duchess's mansion, she showed him a unique sword that carried an embryonic soul. It was a sword that was left unused because of its detrimental effects on the wielder. You took the sword? Alaric looked at the sword in Rin Aspen's hand. He was so focused on stopping them that he didn't notice it right away. Now he was finally sure. This was the same sword he saw at the Duchess's mansion. Rin Aspen shook off the draconic lion's pursuit and dashed off to Chong Min's side. Do it! They will be here soon. Chong Min nodded to Rin Aspen, his eyes filled with resolve. Rin Aspen no longer hesitated. He lifted the demonic sword and stabbed it into Changmin's heart. KHSHK. Your sacrifice will not be in vain, my stupid friend. Rin Aspen muttered. His eyes were slowly turning red as the demonic sword's evil aura began to corrode his mind. He had already killed numerous people and fed their blood to the demonic sword, but he still maintained his sanity because of his strong willpower. However, Changmin carried the blood of a venerable, and his strong vitality was directly absorbed by the demonic sword. The evil aura emanating from the sword became even more intense. It was so strong that one could feel it by just looking at the blood-red sword. Alaric, are you all right? The Empress finally arrived with the Crimson Phoenix Knight's order. Iskila locked her eyes on Rin Aspen and was stunned by the aura he was exuding. This evil aura, could it be that sword? When she realized what was happening, the Empress's face darkened. The demonic sword owned by House Park was a symbol of tragedy. She remembered how many warriors were killed just to quell the chaos brought upon by the last wielder of the sword. Thinking about this, she waved her hand and shouted, "Everyone except the venerables, leave this place at once. It's too late for that." Rin Aspen's evil laughter resounded across the alleyway. Just as the Crimson Phoenix Knight's order was about to leave, an overwhelming pressure descended upon them, stopping them in place. It's the blood domain. Protect them. Don't let Rin Aspen accumulate more blood. The Empress commanded when she noticed the pulsating red patterns gradually forming around them. Hearing her words, Bai Seolhua and Kangjian Jianhua rushed to block Rin Aspen's path. Rin Aspen grinned at them, his blood-red eyes filled with amusement. You just delivered the finest meals for my sword. Rin Aspen tapped his foot and lunged himself to the two ladies, brandishing his demonic sword. Whoosh! Bai Seolhua was the first one to react. She charged and swung her halberd to block his sword. Clang! The powerful collision of their weapons sent sparks flying in all directions. Bai Seolhua, my former student, you have made me proud with your progress. Rin Aspen smiled at her. Shut your mouth. Bai Seolhua recalled the time when Rin Aspen was still not part of the heretic cult. He was her teacher, her mentor, and he was also like a father to her. However, everything changed when he joined the heretic cult. He disappeared out of nowhere and never revealed himself again. Suddenly, Rin Aspen sensed a strong killing intent behind him. He kicked Bai Seolhua and turned around to block Kangjian Jianhua's sneak attack. Clang! He noticed. Kangjian Jianhua was surprised. She had erased her presence before making her move, but Rin Aspen managed to block him just at the right moment. It was simply inconceivable. Step back, you two! Alaric shouted as he summoned the power of destruction towards Rin Aspen. Hearing his words, Bai Seolhua and Kangjian Jianhua immediately retreated. You have a strange power, Alaric of Estania, but can it break my sword? Rin Aspen snorted as he slashed at the dark orb summoned by Alaric. Whoosh! When the demonic sword came into contact with the dark orb, it produced an eerie sound akin to a wailing scream. Rin Aspen frowned at the unexpected reaction of the sword. As the wielder, he could feel that the sword was in pain. How is this possible? The demonic sword was known to be indestructible. No weapon and abilities could break its blade. That was how it was supposed to be. But this indestructible sword was now showing signs of cracks after it destroyed Alaric's dark orb. Just what kind of power is that? He became wary of Alaric's unusual power and domain. I need to deal with him first. Thinking about this, he pounced upon Alaric and sent a series of slashes his way. Whoosh! Whoosh! Alaric couldn't control the destruction domain for a long time because of its high mana consumption. Even so, he pushed himself to the limits and unleashed the full force of his energy core. He was way weaker than Rin Aspen, so he supplemented his weakness with his unparalleled swordsmanship and destruction domain. Bang! 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 Your Majesty, leave the rest to us. Please go and find her grace. Bai Seolhua shouted to the Empress, who was about to make her move. The Empress hesitated. Rin Aspen was a dangerous foe, and with the demonic sword in his hand, it was like adding wings to a tiger. If she were to leave, the three would have a hard time against him. "Your Majesty, we must save her grace," Bai Seolhua urged when she saw the Empress hesitating. After some internal struggle, the Empress relented. "All right, you must be careful. I will return immediately after I save the Duchess. You must stay alive." The Empress took the Crimson Phoenix Knight's order and left the alleyway. Rin Aspen wanted to pursue them, but he was blocked by Alaric, Bai Seolhua, and Kangjian Jianhua. Clang, clang. The fierce battle between the venerables caused massive destruction in the surrounding area. The houses and the various establishments were turned into ruins under their immense power. It's not enough. The demonic sword needs more blood. Rin Aspen found himself struggling against the three venerables. Without the demonic sword, he would already been defeated. It was a critical moment and his mana was slowly dwindling to dangerously low levels. He had to do something before his mana would be depleted. He tried to target Alaric, but the guy was tricky to handle. He could defend himself with his godly swordsmanship, and he also possessed that strange domain. Rin Aspen gave up on Alaric and focused his attacks on Kangjian Jianhua, who was the weakest of the three. Bang! 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 While they were fighting Rin Aspen, the Empress brought the Crimson Phoenix Knight's order to find the Duchess. She used her powerful perception to search for her. "There is a strong energy blocking my perception at the estate of House Park." She frowned. The only thing that could block a venerable's perception was the ability of another venerable. "Follow me. The Duchess should be locked up somewhere in the estate," she commanded her subordinates. "Yes, Your Majesty." The Crimson Phoenix Knight's order responded in unison. Soon, they arrived at the estate and encountered the warriors of the heretic cult. "Hold on." The Empress furrowed her eyebrows as she inspected the enemy warriors. They had experienced the heretic cult's despicable methods, so she wanted to make sure that none of the enemies were innocent civilians. "I detect malicious aura from them. They should be legitimate followers of the heretic cult. Only those people possess this kind of filthy aura." After ascertaining that they were followers of the heretic cult, the Empress ordered her subordinates to attack. "Kill them all." Esquila Veronica rushed to the enemy formation and led her subordinates into battle. The followers of the heretic cult tried to resist them, but there was overwhelming disparity in power. In just less than 10 minutes, thousands of heretic cult warriors were killed. "Advance!" the Empress shouted while wiping off the blood on her cheeks. The group rushed through the pathway leading to the main mansion. They occasionally stopped to search the storage buildings and houses they encountered, but they didn't find any trace of the Duchess. A moment later, another wave of enemy troops came to stop them. This time, there were over 10,000 of them. "We are close to finding the Duchess. Leave none of them alive," the Empress roared as she valiantly led the charge. Her subordinates shouted their battle cries as they followed the Empress. The sounds of weapons clashing and the screams of the warriors echoed in the estate. The Crimson Phoenix Knight's order had only 50 members, so each had to fight hundreds of warriors by themselves. Despite the overwhelming numerical disadvantage, they fought valiantly, wielding their weapons with great precision and force. The warriors of the heretic cult died one by one, unable to even touch them. It was a one-sided battle. This time, it took them almost a quarter of an hour to kill all the enemies. The ground was littered with corpses and blood, dirtying the grand estate of the Duchess. "Let's go!" The Empress didn't even bother to glance at the corpses. She coldly turned and headed in a certain direction. They must be hiding her there. There was one location in the estate where her perception couldn't penetrate. She believed that the heretic cult had locked up the Duchess and the others there. They didn't encounter any resistance along the way, but they didn't let their guard down. They had fought with the heretic cult for a long time, so they knew what kind of methods they were capable of using. Soon, they arrived at a secret passage leading to an underground tunnel. The dark passage was only dimly lit by the torches, and there were plenty of blind spots. It was the perfect place for an ambush. "Your Majesty, it is dangerous down there. Please let me lead the way," one of the Crimson Phoenix Knights volunteered. The Empress hesitated for a moment, before shaking her head. "No, you guys guard the rear. I'll move ahead. Just follow me closely. Your Majesty, there might be an ambush down there. We can't let you take such a risk. Another member opposed her command. They might be loyal to the Empress, but they wouldn't blindly follow her commands, especially when it involved the Empress's safety. Esquila looked at the stubborn female warriors and finally relented. She sighed and nodded to the group. Fine. Keep your eyes peeled. We obey. The Crimson Phoenix Knights are divided into 3 teams. One team acted as the vanguard, another guarded the rear, and the last team moved with the Empress in the middle of the formation. With this setup, they cautiously headed down the dimly lit tunnel, gripping their weapons tightly as they eyed the blind spots. The tunnel was so quiet, only their footsteps and their breathing could be heard. Esquila occasionally swept the surroundings with her mana to check if there were enemies in hiding, but there was no one to be seen. They walked along the tunnel for about 10 minutes before they arrived at the deepest point where they found an underground prison. So you are here, Your Majesty. Kakik. A group of warriors led by an old man appeared at the farthest end of the long corridor. It's you. Crazy Sen. The Empress immediately recognized the old man's face. He was the former alchemist of the imperial family who once worked for the late emperor. He was a well-respected man, highly regarded for his miraculous medicines. However, it was later found out that he was doing inhumane experiments. Because of this, the Empress stripped him of his position and banished him to the borders. Looking at her stunned face, San was amused. Kakik, how have you been, Your Majesty? I hope things have been well during my absence. The Empress took a deep breath to calm her emotions. Was it your doing? She muttered with a cold gaze. Sen put on a baffled expression. What do you mean, Your Majesty? I don't understand what you are saying. Stop acting dumb, Sen. I know it was you who turned those innocent people into mindless followers of the cult. Only you can do something like that. The Empress spoke with certainty. San rubbed his chin, grinning from ear to ear. Oh, you mean that? Did you like it? I gave them something really good, and they all willingly accepted it when I told them that it was a gift from Your Majesty. Kakik. The Empress's eyes flashed with rage, her aura suddenly fluctuating vigorously. Seeing this, Sun smiled and said, I have another gift for Your Majesty. It is my greatest creation thus far. Behold! A group of heretic believers stepped forward, pulling a chain tied to a growling monster in human form. The Empress furrowed her eyebrows. She thought that it was just an experimental monster of the old man. But then her eyes widened when she saw something familiar in the humanoid monster. That is, with a look of disbelief, she murmured, Park Sagwa. Kakik. I thought you wouldn't recognize her. The old man smirked. That's right. This monster is the Duchess. Isn't she lovely? I gave her the best medicine I have. Kakik. His eerie laughter echoed across the underground prison. What? Hearing his confirmation, the Empress covered her mouth with her hand. Her eyes filled with incredulity. Her surprise soon turned into rage. What did you do to her, you damn old man? She unsheathed her sword, her arms shaking. The warriors of the heretic cult quickly unsheathed their weapons, prepared to take action. The Crimson Phoenix Knights also adjusted their stances, eyeing the heretic cult warriors with fury. San stared deeply at the Empress and laughed at her with contempt. Kakik! With a wave of his hand, he signaled to his subordinates. Release the monsters! Release them all! Kakik! The heretic cult warriors opened the prisons. They also released Park Sagwa from her chains. Roar! Roar! The underground prison was filled with beastly roars as hundreds of humanoid monsters rushed out from the prison cells. The Empress and the Crimson Phoenix Knights recognized some of these monsters. They were warriors of House Park, and there were even officials of Almunson. You demon! What did you do to these people? The Empress roared as she charged into the crowd of humanoid monsters, bypassing them with quick movements. Her target was only San, but the guy was like a sly old man. He had only slipped away after they released the humanoid monsters. The Empress only heard his mocking voice echoing through the corridor. Enjoy your time with them, Your Majesty. Kakik. Your Majesty? What should we do with these people? The Crimson Phoenix Knights also recognized the humanoid monsters. Although their appearance changed significantly, they were still recognizable. The Empress controlled her emotions and responded with a stern look. Don't kill them. Just restrain them. Understood. The battle against the humanoid monsters began. Roar. The underground prison was filled with chilling beastly roars. The Crimson Phoenix Knights were powerful, but they had to control their strength in this fight, making the situation quite difficult for them. Among the humanoid monsters there were transcendent knights. They couldn't use their mana, but their raw physical power was akin to that of a barbarian. This was the effect of the drug that was forced upon them. Park Sagwa, can you not recognize me? I am your Empress. Esquila looked at the humanoid monster before her with a look of remorse. The proud Duchess of House Park has been turned into a monster, one that was unable to recognize anyone. Roar! Park Sagwa, who had been turned into a beast, roared at the Empress before lunging at her with her mouth wide open. Seeing this, the Empress felt a wave of pain. Park Sagwa wasn't just a subordinate, she was her closest confidant. I will make things right and make whoever did this to you pay 100 times the amount of pain you suffered, Esquila mumbled in a cold voice. Just as Park Sagwa was about to take a huge chunk off of her neck, she suddenly did a quick turn. Whoosh! Please forgive me for this. Esquila slapped the back of her head with just enough force to make her go unconscious. Pa! With the vast difference in their power, Park Sagwa couldn't even dodge. Her vision blurred and she slipped into darkness. Is that your Majesty? After dealing with Park Sagwa, the Empress helped the Crimson Phoenix Knights deal with the remaining humanoid monsters. It took them half an hour to subdue all the monsters. Everyone was exhausted after the battle. They weren't just physically exhausted, they were mentally drained too. Tie them all up and bring them out of this place, the Empress commanded. She could see that everyone was tired, but they had no time to waste. The members of the heretic cult might set up another trap for them if they delayed any further. Yes, Your Majesty, everyone responded in unison. Meanwhile, the battle against Rin Aspen was still far from over. Bang! 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 After having consumed Chongmin's blood, the demonic sword was already showing signs of awakening. With every swing from Rin Aspen, the evil blood aura would follow. At this moment, Alaric's destruction domain had already faded. It was sucking a lot of his mana, so he had to unsummon it so he could continue fighting with Rin Aspen. My ice domain can barely hold up against his blood domain. Alaric was breathing heavily as he looked at Rin Aspen. He turned his head to Bai Sealhua and Kangjian Jianhua. He could see that they were exhausted, but they still had enough energy to go on. Those two had also released their domains, but even with our combined efforts we still can't take down that bloody bastard. Roar! A furious, beastly roar echoed above the sky. Zephyr swooped down and spat out a breath of flames at Rin Aspen. Seeing this, Alaric smiled. Luckily, we have Zephyr. Without it, things would have been bad for us three. The Draconic Lion proved to be a capable teammate. It drew most of Rin Aspen's attention, which gave them opportunities to catch him off guard. With their efforts, they left wounds on Rin Aspen. Bang! Rin Aspen swung the demonic sword, cleaving the fire breath in half. Whoosh! His clothes fluttered vigorously as the strong winds blew by. He could barely control his sanity. The sword's consciousness was corroding his mind, and it was feeding him with evil emotions. Kill! I need to kill them and drink their blood. His bloodshot eyes stopped on Kangjian Jianhua. The woman was the most weary among his enemies. She still had energy, but her mana was about to be depleted. I will kill you first. Having chosen his target, Rin Aspen charged towards Kangjian Jianhua. With a quick leap, he appeared right in front of her, catching her by surprise. Whoosh! Rin Aspen swung the demonic sword, causing the air to fluctuate intensely. Kangjian Jianhua gritted her teeth. She infused mana into her sword as she blocked the attack coming her way. Clang! When their weapons clashed, Kangjian Jianhua found herself flying into the air. How is he this strong? Her arms had gone numb from the impact and she could feel her insides twisting from the pain. Just then, she saw Rin Aspen's sword coming straight at her. It was so fast that she could barely follow it with her eyes. She wanted to move, but her body wouldn't listen. "Deputy Commander!" Baisealwa cried out. Just when she thought that she would die, a figure suddenly appeared in front of her, blocking Rin Aspen's sword in the nick of time. Clang! "Pull yourself together, woman. If you don't want to die, bite your tongue and come to your senses," Alaric shouted at her. Hearing this, Kangjianjianhua felt a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. With a snort, she somersaulted in midair and landed gracefully on the ground. "Are you all right, Deputy Commander?" Baisealwa rushed to her side to check on her condition. After making sure that she was fine, Baisealwa was relieved. "You should get some rest. You can leave this to us." "No!" Kangjianjianhua shook her head. "I know that you two are also tired. Even that beast is tired. If I rest here, you wouldn't be able to win against Rin Aspen. We need to do this together," she exclaimed with determination. Baisealwa wanted to dissuade her, but she stopped. She knew how stubborn her deputy could get. "All right, but you must not exert yourself. I understand. Let's do this." Rin Aspen created some distance from them as he eyed them with a cold gaze. He wanted to use Kangjianjianhua to fully awaken the demonic sword, but killing her proved difficult. "I need to get my hands on some fresh blood." Suddenly, his eyes flashed as he thought about something. "The blood of the fallen soldiers. I can use their blood to feed the demonic sword." Thinking about this, Rin Aspen didn't hesitate. He turned around and rushed out of the alleyway to head back to the place where the corpses had been left. "He is running away. Don't let him escape," Alaric shouted when he saw their opponent trying to flee. "Roar!" Zephyr was the first to react. It flapped its wings and chased Rin Aspen with a furious roar. The chase began in the narrow alleyway. Occasionally, Alaric and the two ladies would release strikes at Rin Aspen, hoping to slow him down. However, the guy was like a slippery eel, quick and agile. Bang! Bang! Numerous houses had already been destroyed by their attacks, but they still hadn't landed a hit on their target. "He is heading to..." At this moment, Baisealwa realized what Rin Aspen was planning to do, making her face sink at the bottom of the abyss. "He is planning to use the corpses of the fallen soldiers to feed the demonic sword. We must stop him," she shouted, her voice carrying a hint of panic. If the demonic sword awakened, Veronica would face the birth of another demon. Hearing her words, Alaric and Kangjianjianhua felt a sense of urgency. Although Alaric hadn't seen it for himself, he had heard about the notoriety of the demonic sword from the Duchess. It was a cursed sword that would corrode the mind of its wielder and turn them into a mindless slaughterer. "I cannot allow such a dangerous sword to exist. I must destroy it." He was afraid that the demonic sword would come to visit Estania. If that were to happen, his country would face a terrible calamity. With this in his mind, Alaric sped up and unleashed his energy core. He couldn't be bothered to save his remaining mana. The situation was critical. He felt a wave of pain in his chest after he forcefully unleashed his energy core. He gritted his teeth and silently communicated with the destruction element present in the surroundings. "Please, lend me your power," he screamed in his heart. Just then, he felt something stirring in the air. He could feel it. The untamable element was starting to listen to his commands. The tiny elements began to converge around him, as if conveying their desire to follow him. Alaric was stunned. He quickly took a deep breath to calm himself. He then lifted his hand and controlled the floating elements according to his will. With a twisting motion of his hand, he summoned the power of destruction. Black orbs suddenly appeared around Rin Aspen, taking him by surprise. He found them incredibly familiar. This aura, it's him. Alaric's silver sword. Rin Aspen's face darkened. This unusual power caused him significant trouble earlier. It was because of this power that they were able to wound him. How can he use this power when he is already a spent force? Is he forcefully using his energy core? Damn it! He didn't expect Alaric to be so decisive. While he was distracted from his thoughts, the black orbs suddenly began to release a powerful suction force. It was so strong that the air fluctuated intensely. Rin Aspen knew that if he were to touch these orbs, his life would be over. With a defiant snort, he released a wave of mana to strengthen his blood domain. Blood-red tentacles with an overwhelming evil aura sprouted from the ground and glided through the air like serpents. "Watch out!" Alaric warned the ladies. He swung his swords and cut apart the thick red tentacles that came his way. Whoosh! Whoosh! Bai Seohwa and her deputy were also being attacked. The two brandished their weapons to destroy the red tentacles, but there just seemed to be an endless amount of them. They will keep on spawning as long as the blood domain is active. Your Highness, we will carve a path for you. You must strike him down. Bai Seohwa shouted at Alaric. Alaric frowned, nodding his head. Let's do this. He lifted his head and called out in a booming voice. Zephyr! Roar! The draconic lion let out a mighty roar in response to his call. Even without a command, it seemed to have understood his intentions. Zephyr flapped its wings and swooped down like a meteor. It then opened its mouth and spat out a breath of flames. Roar! The draconic lion's flames burned the red tentacles into dust. No matter how many of them sprang out from the ground, the blazing flames quickly burned them down. Seeing this, Rin Aspen's face darkened. He imbued mana into the demonic sword and released a strike that cleaved into the air. Whoosh! The force carried by the sword extinguished the flames. Rin Aspen didn't celebrate just yet, for there was another wave of attacks coming at him at lightning speed. Bai Seohwa and Kangjian Jianhua, the two leaders of the Crimson Phoenix Knights, released their most powerful moves. Their attacks left massive destruction in their wake, scarring the land and the nearby buildings. Bang! Bang! Rin Aspen squinted his eyes and quickly swung his weapon to defend himself. The combined power of the two mythical knights brought him immense pressure. Clang! Clang! With some effort, he managed to block their attacks, but he was left with some deep wounds. Damn it! Just then, he felt his instincts screaming danger. He instinctively dodged to the right. You're fast, but you won't be able to escape this time. Alaric's cold voice drifted into his ears. Bang! A sharp pain registered in his left arm. To his shock and horror, Rin Aspen saw that his arm had been cut off. Alaric was about to deliver the final strike when he felt strong vibrations from the ground. Just then, he sensed a chilling aura, approaching him at lightning speed. Who? Hey! Get out of there! He suddenly heard Kangjian Jianhua's panicked voice behind him. Just as he was about to turn his head, someone pushed him and sent him rolling to the ground. Bang! No! A loud bang rang out, followed by Seohwa's devastated roar. Hearing this, Alaric quickly turned his head and saw Kangjian Jianhua impaled to the ground by a javelin. She was already lifeless. Her heart had been pierced by a javelin, killing her on the spot. The deputy commander of the Crimson Phoenix Knights order died just like that. No one saw it coming. Alaric was startled. Kangjian Jianhua wasn't an average mythical knight. She was even stronger than his father, Lucas Silversword. However, such a powerful venerable was killed in a single shot. She saved me. Looking at her lifeless body, Alaric felt a wave of sadness and fury. I was aiming for you, but she took the blow instead. Tsk. Tisk. An aged voice drifted into his ears. Alaric frowned and turned his head. He saw a gentle-looking old man helping Rin Aspen get up. Who are you? Alaric asked in a low voice as he used his appraisal on the old man. Benedict Agma, 4-ringed Beast Soul Grandmaster EXP. 8777/10,000. Potential, SSS. Integrated Monster Traits. Darkness Manipulation, SSS. Poison Body, SSS. Devil Soul, SS. Demonic Regeneration, SS. Traits. Spear Mastery, SSS. Close Combat, SSS. Poison Mastery, SSS. Manipulation, SS. Horse Riding, SS. Strength. 1,388. Stamina, 1,297. Agility, 1,344. Vitality, 1,301. Endurance, 1,205. Mana, 1,500. When he saw the old man's ridiculously high attributes and superior traits, his back broke out in cold sweat. Is he the cult leader? The old man was too powerful. His raw attributes alone were already on par with the Empress's. The old man didn't answer his question and just smiled at him. I want to chat with you, but let's talk another time. We will meet again soon, Your Highness. He grabbed the injured Rin Aspen and left with a big leap. Whoosh! Alaric could only watch them leave. He didn't even dare try to stop them. There was a huge difference in their power. If he were to fight the old man in his state, he would only end up critically injured or even dead. Jiamwa! Bai Xiaohua's grieving voice disrupted his thoughts. She could no longer feel her friend's pulse. She was already dead. Her memories with Kangji and Jiamwa replayed in her mind, filling her with even more pain. Why? She punched the ground repeatedly, making her knuckles bleed. Bang! Bang! Alaric couldn't bear to watch anymore and grabbed her arm. Miss Bai, it's all my fault. If I hadn't been careless, Miss Kangjian. In the end, he sighed with guilt and remorse. He was so focused on Rin Aspen that he failed to sense the incoming attack. If it weren't for Kangji and Jiamwa, it would have been him impaled on the ground. Bai Xiaohua pushed his hand away, crying. Seeing her like this, Alaric could only sigh helplessly. After almost an entire minute, Bai Xiaohua pulled out the javelin from Kangji and Jiamwa's body and carefully placed her on the ground. I will avenge you, I promise, she muttered under her breath, her eyes flashing with boundless rage and killing intent. Suddenly, they heard a series of footsteps approaching them. What happened here? Min Taehyun appeared together with some of the Imperial Guards. Galliner and the others were also with them. They quickly rushed over when they saw Bai Xiaohua holding a corpse. When he saw the lifeless Kangji and Jiamwa, Min Taehyun's eyes widened with disbelief. The deputy commander. The Imperial Guards were also shocked. Kangji and Jiamwa was one of the most formidable warriors of Veronica. They couldn't believe that she would fall here in their battle against the heretic cult. Who did it? Min Taehyun turned his head to Alaric, his eyes cold. Sensing his gaze, Alaric shook his head and replied, I don't know his name, but it was an old man. He came all of a sudden when we were about to kill Rin Aspen. Min Taehyun frowned at his words. It must be him. Someone suddenly spoke. Everyone turned their heads to look at Sikas, who was observing the surroundings with his mystical eyes. I can see the remnants of his evil aura here, he mumbled. When he followed Samantha to a church, he encountered an old priest who possessed a dark soul. He could see the traces of the old priest's evil energy in the air. It was dark and gloomy just like his soul. What do you mean? Min Taehyun looked at him with a frown. Sikas calmly recounted his encounter with the old priest. Based on your description, it must be Benedict. I can't believe he is part of the heretic cult. Min Taehyun couldn't believe it. Benedict was a high-ranking priest of the church, a man known for his faith in Eru. It wasn't just him, the Imperial Guards couldn't believe it either. They had met the old priest on numerous occasions. He was a kind and gentle old man. He is telling the truth. It's Benedict. Bai Xiaohua confirmed it. She had already cooled down, but her rage was still there. Then we must find him and avenge the deputy commander. Min Taehyun clenched his fists. His anger was evident from his tone. Bai Xiaohua shook her head. You haven't seen it. That old demon had hidden himself well. He is far stronger than you think. Min Taehyun furrowed his eyebrows. He could sense the fury in her eyes. He was aware of the relationship between Bai Xiaohua and her deputy commander. They were like sisters. He knew that she wouldn't speak carelessly about this. Let's search for Her Majesty and relay the news to her. Bai Xiaohua commanded the troops. Min Taehyun nodded. All right, let's go.